We're going to have a lovely week. Let's pray. Siti Muga, good morning.
Morning, Eric.
How are you?
I am fine. Thank you, Eric.
Good to see you this weekend.
Sansana.
How was your weekend?
Good.
Very good.
Yes.
Nduoko.
Yes. Good
How
morning.
are you?
Fine, thank you.
Your Excellency.
Majesty.
Well, Your Majesty.
We must get these things.
Ah,
right.
yeah. We must
Queen,
remember your
Queen
lineage.
Elizabeth sneeze.
Yes. You must remember the lineage. Yes.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you,
Super
Your Majesty.
duper. Good, Your Excellency.
I'm keeping well.
Good.
Mm.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, I did have a good weekend. I had a lovely weekend.
Great.
I visited my mother.
Oh, hey, yeah. For how is mommy?
Mommy is fine.
That's good.
She's doing well.
And how is Sunny doing?
The Sunny is now happy.
Now he's happy.
The excellent Sunny.
He's ready to open the week.
Hey, wait, okay.
Yes. So, welcome to today's show. We've got a lot to discuss. Raila Odinga says, get ready because reggae is coming back on the streets of the country. BBI. So, we want to understand this BBI story and what exactly its expected benefits to the people. Remember, we've only seen the draft report, and then the team went back, and the team is now supposed to fine-tune that report. Of course, it's not creating a new report, so it's fine-tuning what we already know. So let's talk about BBI today. We also will talk about the impact of COVID-19. We have talked about it many times, but now there's a new study again that has looked at the impact of COVID-19 on people's pockets, on people's livelihoods, and also as children go back to school. And what very many parents feel about that, what their capacity is to be able to resume education for their children. But at the same time, we've been told to stop dancing Jerusalem
Yeah, please.
Bye.
by the man in charge of health.
I thought he said dance at least, but maintain social distance.
He said, you know what, this dance, okay. Be more careful as you dance. This Jerusalem dance.
Did he not begin by saying, there's a place here on Langata?
There are places on Langata that we had shut down before. And
Now,
yeah,
we're here. They have begun a new trend.
there's begun a new trend now. And this dance does not require people to be close to one
be
another.
intimate,
It's not
apana.
about intimacy. So really, if you must dance this Jerusalem,
Surely.
maintain distance. Yeah. So let's look at the number of COVID-19 in the country.
So in the country now, we're looking at 44,881 coronavirus cases with 832 deaths. Yesterday, the number of cases that were reported after a certain amount of testing was done was 685 new cases and 7 new deaths in the country, and that's what shot those numbers up. We saw that there was about 2,000 voluntary tests were taken out over the weekend, just over 2,000, and so we're likely to see the results of those in the coming days. So it's not that the testing that was done over the weekend is what was being recorded yesterday. It just means that from what Nairobi Metropolitan Services then was able to collate over the 3 days of voluntary testing, they came to about 2,000 and plus people that showed up around the different centers.
So that entire campaign only got 2,000 people going for tests.
A little over 2,000, which is what we heard as of yesterday morning. We'll probably see other numbers coming out today and give us a larger number. But so far, as of yesterday morning, 2,000 people came out. Okay? So now these numbers that we are seeing of 685 yesterday and 634 the day before, and 604 and 602 were from previous tests that had been done in the days before. All right? And yes, the CS says you are to blame. He tells politicians this specifically as well. The country has been hit by a second wave, is what he's saying. And he's blamed the political leadership that has not adhered to guidelines meant to avert the virus spread. He spoke at Afi House yesterday and said that politicians, organized rallies without observing set precautionary measures. And Kenyans have copied this. I guess in this case, politicians are not Kenyans, but okay. He regretted that the positivity rate of the virus had been on the rise since President Uhuru Kenyatta eased restrictions and that were meant to forestall the spread of the virus. So by the time Uhuru Kenyatta was speaking, the positivity rate was at 3.7%, just under 4. And now it's well over 12 in about 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
So he's blaming politicians for what exactly?
Not adhering to restrictions and these precautionary measures that have been put in place. I mean, not having these large political rallies where people have to come out in great numbers and then mix and match with one another. And unfortunately, not wearing masks. No kind of social distancing is being observed whatsoever.
So he took
leaders issue with this and said that now the problem is that everybody goes to these rallies and then goes back to their homes. And potential danger lurks there.
Political leaders, all right. So the president said the same thing during that national COVID-19 conference.
Yeah.
Musalia had raised it at that conference and said, we are to blame. The president said, it's you political leaders who are to blame. Now the CS is saying the same. But has anything changed? Absolutely nothing. So can they just stop playing us with these words? Just stop saying it's you politicians who are to blame.
Why did they not just stop? Stop as in halt.
Halt political rallies.
Halt. Forget licensing, nice talk. Halt.
Stop it. If you're serious about curbing the spread, then there's certain things that you need to put in place. You can't come and, again, throw words at this thing and say, oh, actually, you shouldn't, because you've seen the trend. They're not going to stop, right? If anything, now, they're amping up. The tempo is being raised in terms of rallies. They're going to continue. So stop it. If you want to stop the spread, you stop the activities that would lead to the spread. It only makes sense.
They are not going to stop.
Exactly.
So
they
just
won't.
stop talking about it. Simple. Stop talking about. Stop telling us, oh, politicians, we are the ones to blame. Stop telling people, if you go, just forget it. Stop talking to us.
And let Corona spread.
Just leave us alone.
Okay. So
you're doing nothing. Now he's warning that, we could have a second series of lockdown. Lockdown. Here.
Not going to happen. Interesting enough, some other things to note. Some other things to note which are important, I think, is that the ministry, collectively, they've noted a high number of COVID-19 patients in need of critical care and admitted in intensive care units. A total 28 patients are in ICU with about 1,000 admissions in various hospitals countrywide. At least 106 people were reported to have recovered from the disease yesterday, though. Among them, 73 were managed under the home-based care program, while the remaining 25 or so had to be in critical care. We still see that certain counties having problems here, especially Nakuru, which we brought up before, having to have more and more patients in critical care and then having not enough oxygen. So that issue has to be dealt with. So it would be interesting to see over the next couple of days what these numbers look like. And we know that the Ministry of Health is advising the government at large in terms of what to do. Okay. If we look around the world, the numbers around the world now are 40,278,207. The United States, again, still high up there, and India now at 7.5 million. So over the last 3 days, India's cases have risen by 432,000 since Friday. Now at 548,238. That's what they're looking at. And probably going to get to 8 million by the end of this week, if not sooner, unfortunately. And it seems that things are taking them, a little bit faster than they would have experienced or that would have anticipated. Numbers still continue to rise around the world, even in New Zealand, where after 3 weeks again, where they thought that they had things under control, they again found one more corona. It's like they get there and one more creeps in. They get to that place where 3 weeks they don't find any cases, and then one or two creep in, and so we're at that place.
But look at the detail of the responses. One.
Yeah.
Imagine.
One.
They respond as though that entire area was infected.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine the measures
What
that
do
they
they
put in
do?
place.
Shut down a town.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do, literally.
They do. They shut down completely. No going out, no coming in.
Into this one particular area.
That's it.
And it's one case.
One case.
All right.
That's how seriously they take it. And then when they realize there's no more problems, they open it up again. But they do not allow any romantic lingering and toing and froing.
How many people have died of coronavirus in New Zealand?
Well, we can find that out in just a second. As we do that, it's interesting to note that even as, you know, the Prime Minister has been elected for another term, it was interesting that a lot of people said that her response to catastrophes over the last years is what gave New Zealanders the impetus to say, you know what, we want this woman back in the seat. And voila, there she is. In terms of how she's been able to work around corona and other things. So there have been a total of 25 deaths in New Zealand, right? A total number of 1,888 cases. Of course, we're looking at a population of 5 million. However, the cases per 1 million are just 377.
It's a population of 5 million. They have done 1 million tests.
Yes, a fifth of their population has been tested.
And only 25 deaths.
Total cases 1,800. Yeah, so Jacinda Ardern deserved a new term.
Right.
This Prime Minister walks her talk.
She does. She does.
If she says something, take it as a given.
Yep.
She says they're going to do it, take it as a given.
Even when they had the terrorist attack in Christchurch a couple of years ago, and what did she say? She said, you know what, we're going to seek justice to the letter. And when this gentleman was convicted, she came out and she said, we had to work, we had to do everything that we could to make sure that this conviction came about. However, we also had to do more than that to make sure that the families of those affected received some kind of justice on their side. So just as you talked about the detail, when you talk about the detail, they found one case of COVID-19 after 3 weeks of having found none. And they went ahead and did something about that. I think that just goes to show the detail through which her leadership also was carried out over the last 3 years. And she did just that, details, paying attention to each and every detail. And it shows. It works.
The other country that has shown this sort of commitment actually is China. Now, you see, this is where we as human beings are at best described as funny, okay? Because when someone takes stringent measures, dictator, okay? If someone is lax and easygoing, lackadaisical, does not know what they're doing.
Incompetent.
So which is which? And unfortunately, with COVID, you cannot take a middle of the road attitude.
Can't sit on the fence.
No.
Neither can you say one thing today and another thing tomorrow.
You actually need to be absolutely firm. And it isn't just being firm with what you say. It has to be accompanied by things. These people are testing.
Yep.
They're quarantining people. They're making sure that they do everything that is known to possibly reduce the possibility of the infection spreading. So, their words are accompanied by the things. Here.
So you can't even trust the leadership. In New Zealand, I'm sure when they're told stay indoors, now you can come out, they are very, very aware of what the government is saying and they want to participate in the government's program.
They are.
In this country, or in other parts of the world where you see leaders who are just, flip-flopping, takes a lot of time to go with them. At 6:15 now, let's take a break and see what's happening in the skies this lovely Monday morning. Is it going to rain? Is it not? That's what we want to know. And then we'll look at the headlines and other stories from the weekend. Good morning.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmster, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 16 this morning. There is a chance of rain, Eric. Highs of 24 and lows of 15. We'll see what that looks like through the day. In Nyeri, it's cloudy and likely to enter into rain session later. Highs of 23 and lows of 15. Nakuru experiencing light rain showers this morning at 15 degrees. Highs of 21 and lows of 14 with a chance of thunderstorms later. It's cloudy in Eldoret and probably will lead to rains. Highs of 19 and lows of 13 and thunderstorms in the forecast as well. It's mostly cloudy in Kisumu at 20. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. Thunderstorms expected. Thunderstorms are also expected in Kakamega. Currently mostly cloudy at 16, highs of 26 and lows of 16. It's partly cloudy in Mombasa at 25, highs of 30 and lows of 24. 26 and clear skies in Malindi at the moment. Sunny conditions looking like they're going to last the whole day. Highs of 30 and lows of 25. 25 degrees the high and lows of 18 in Kampala today. It's currently mostly cloudy and likely to go into an afternoon of thunderstorms. Clear skies in Dar es Salaam at 23 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 22. Johannesburg is experiencing clear skies. It's a bit warm this morning at 18. It'll go to highs of 31 and lows of 17. It's partly cloudy in Lagos, highs of 31 and lows of 24 today. And in Beijing, mostly sunny well into Monday afternoon, 16 degrees at the moment. Highs of 23 is where it will fluctuate to and coming down to a chilly low of 6. In London, it's partly cloudy at 11, highs of 14. Cloudy conditions likely to last throughout today. Foggy conditions in Paris at 6. Things generally starting to cool down. We'll see highs of 16 and lows of 5. And in New York, Sunday night is clear at 14 degrees, just around 10 p.m. Going through to Monday morning, we'll see highs of 17 and lows of 12.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
18
FM.
minutes after 6 and the live stream is up. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter and www.spicefm.co.ke. Lawrence Carrier, Beatty Ersley, Laban Tanui Kapte, Kaptel, Jeffrey Mochama, all tuned in from various parts of the country. There is, of course, Machakos, Nandi, Kisumu, Kibos. Lawrence, where are you? I mean, he keeps traveling, right? Last week, Lawrence had traveled somewhere. So wherever you are today, Lawrence, let us know. And we know that you are online. CT Muga, as we begin this new week, tafadhali tupatie medali ya siku.
If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito.
If you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending the night with a mosquito.
Yes.
Clear and straightforward, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes. So let's look at the headlines as we get into the big stuff. Nation, loans shocker for borrowers. The devil is in the detail, it seems, as thousands of Kenyans who took advantage of a loan repayment holiday offered by banks, SACCOs and other financial institutions are learning this the hard way after they discovered that their debts continue to accumulate interest during the relief from COVID period. Huge story given an entire page coverage in The Nation. And it talks about, all right, so this is what happened. We know that the CBK had a conversation with the banks. The CBK relaxed its regulations on how you handle loans. And so banks offered some 3-month window. Many people went and applied, and they went to, you go and sit with your bank manager and you apply and you say, I'd like to take advantage of this window because of COVID-19. So people don't pay. It turns out that you got some kind of relief. There are those that got a full relief. There are those that were getting just a relief on the principal amount, but the interest continues to accrue. So there's a gentleman here, for example, who is quoted in the story. His name is Njiro. Mr. Njiro, the proprietor of Bucket List Adventures, a tour firm, said that he saw the repayment holiday as a huge relief on his outstanding car loan. The hospitality sector was one of the hardest hit as the pandemic suspended international and local transport. But Njiro now says the relief has turned into a nightmare because the bank he would not have signed on the deal allowing him a break from repaying his 200,000 shillings bank loan. Why? After 6 months, the bank recently wrote to Njiro demanding interest of up to 24,000 shillings that had piled up over the repayment holiday period. The deal with my bank would have been a huge relief for me, but it's turning out to be a raw deal. They explained that they had been loading up interest during the 6-month period, and this means that I'll end up paying 24,000 shillings more. In fact, now the bank has asked him to pay 45,000 shillings at once, failure to which the loan will be considered to have fallen into arrears.
Wow.
And if you think that is something, page 5 of the Business Daily, otherwise known as Daily Business, taxman Nyeri in 1.2 billion court row despite Uhuru order. The president had ordered that government agencies that have issues among themselves drop the court cases, look for alternative resolution mechanisms. Nyeri owes the taxman money, according to the taxman. Nyeri has refused to pay. That's what it boils down to. And they have ignored the court order completely, and they have ignored not just the court, they have ignored what the presidential order. And they are proceeding to do exactly what they like. Now, why I'm bringing up this case is this. I'm thinking, why has the taxman not used all the tools it has at its disposal to ensure that this money is paid? If this is the case, and this, by the way, this is a case that goes back to 2012. It didn't start yesterday. The question I'm asking is, how many government agencies then have issues of this nature that we haven't heard of and have money which they owe? Now, you would think maybe Nyeri doesn't have money, but no. Nyeri in 2019 paid out 280 million in dividends to shareholders for the period ending 2019. Meaning, instead of trying to sort out what they owe, the board voted that shareholders should be paid money.
Should be given money, yes.
Now, we keep saying we don't have money. We keep saying that the government is cash-strapped. The government may very well be cash-strapped. But if within its own ranks, and even after a presidential order has been given, stated categorically,
Get out of court.
settle these things among yourselves, and you still find that boards are still carrying on. I have not read anywhere that this board has been disbanded. No, I have not read anywhere.
That they've been summoned?
Yes, now,
No.
if this is what happens at that level, what exactly does the government think the Mwananchi who is and Asante is going to do? They will look and say, wait a moment. Why are we the ones being pressurized to do all these sort of things? And people who know they should do what they should do are not doing it, and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Does it not dovetail into the discussion we were having earlier on about the crocodile tears that leaders keep crying about? Oh, leaders are doing this. And yet, the solution to the problem is not difficult to understand.
Yep.
But no one is making any attempt to actually solve the problem.
Absolutely no one. None at all. And if I just come back into this loans shocker and what was happening, it clearly shows that there's what banks understood and there's what their customers understood and there's what banks did not make their customers understand. Because clearly, for example, a case like this one where you're, at the end of this, you're told, oh, you owe us 24,000 shillings. And then we continue. So what did you sign up for? What did you really understand that this moratorium meant? Was there an attempt at making you understand exactly what it meant? There's somebody else who says that they decided they really had gone up for signing up with the bank. But after advice from the bank official, he realized, hey, no, this is not going to work for me. Let me just find a way of continuing to pay.
But you know the nature of a moratorium, as I understand it, it doesn't mean that you are not required to pay. It just means that you've been given a holiday so that you don't pay what you are supposed to pay over a period of time. That's what it means. Everything else remains constant.
What is that's remaining constant?
What remains constant is what you owe.
Yep.
If there was interest to be paid, that just accrues.
Right.
Why does it accrue?
It accrues because you owe money. And if you owe, your understanding and the agreement that you signed with the bank is that that loan will be given to you at this sort of interest. So it continues. The only thing that you are given a break on is the actual payment, because at that point in time, the understanding is that you are unable to pay. So you say, okay, for this period of time, you don't have to pay. But everything else is constant. In fact, there are cases where they say, if you can't pay the principal, pay the interest.
But then the banks had they were taking advantage of this relief program. It was possible for them to also suspend the interest.
Yes, it was.
Why not?
Yes,
Because if
yes,
you're talking
it
about
was
now
possible.
extending this tenure, and you know exactly the reason why this person is not able to pay. If you said 6 months, halt everything for 6 months.
Eric, is it not the same thing? And I'm in agreement with you here. Is it not the same thing as what we are discussing regarding the crocodile tears that are being shed
Yep.
by political leaders? Okay?
Yep.
Oh, social distance. Oh, this. Oh, the other. Surely, are we saying that we do not know what the solution to this is? Are we saying it is so difficult to simply say no more rallies? But you see, if you say no more rallies for deputy president, it means no more rallies for everybody else.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
So you get the impression that actually it's not that they mind the rallies. But the rallies aren't our issue. Our issue is the health concerns with crowding. That's the issue here. And you can't have a rally and people without people
Without
crowding.
people
You
crowding,
cannot.
That's it, exactly.
Yes. So, and at the same time, they're going to say that they are actually concerned about the welfare and the health of the citizenry.
They're
Really?
not.
Really?
They're not.
Really?
They are not. Absolutely not. I don't think we are where we were in March.
No.
No,
Everybody's attitude has changed on that.
that's for sure.
And actually, it's not just changed, but there's a permanency to that change. Because since March, the sort of things that have happened and the sort of things that the Mwananchi has had to deal with. And there's something that the politician in this country forgets. You're talking about a citizenry that's far more informed than they've ever been since this country got independence. They are informed. You may not hear them speak, but they know what is happening. They understand it. They've even analyzed it. And believe me, they have an opinion on that subject.
Completely. Let's take a break at 28 minutes after 6. We want to take a look at what's happening on the roads and then look at other headlines. Vincent says, good morning on this third week of October. May I ask this morning, did you get a satisfactory response as for the assignment on the geographical location of Malakisi? Whoa, even actually got a
A pin.
map shared with us of exactly where it is. I think the only way we can get a satisfactory response is by going there.
Field trip.
Field trip.
Necessary.
Establish where exactly is this Malakisi. So tukiwa hapa, Busia iko hapa,
Koliani boys.
Koliani boys iko hapa. Where is Bungoma? Who comes here to collect fees for the market and all? Is it county officials from Busia or county officials from Bungoma? Or both? 29 minutes after 6. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Spice FM, Malindi.
All right, this is a Monday morning and we're likely to see an
Traffic.
influx of traffic into the city today, starting on Mombasa Road already, starting to build up all the way from the Way Bridge. It's at Mlolongo. It's going to go then towards the SGR and then out towards the JKIA turnoff and out. Then Cabanas is going to move slower and slower as we get towards 7 o'clock. If you didn't leave earlier, this might be a problem this morning. It's a Monday morning, so we're likely to see heightened levels of traffic. Also, coming off of Thika Road, getting past Survey is going to be a bit of a pickle. There is traffic already building up there, then Garden City, and then the Utali Drift. And then from Kiambu Road is already jam-packed, coming out and then joining there at Muthaiga Corner. So we're seeing Thika Road already, Mombasa Road already. The construction continues, so if you're out and about this morning, you know where you would get stuck. It's looking good on Jogo Road today as you're trying to get into the city as well. At the City Stadium roundabout, it's moving slowly. But you'll be able to get there without any problems at this time. Let's see what it looks like at about 7 o'clock. You're stuck somewhere, let us know. Spice FMKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Or text us on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So Wilson Sossion believes that teachers will get a 200% pay rise, and this is to cushion teachers from the effects of COVID-19. The Kenya National Union of Teachers has demanded a pay rise of up to 200% to cushion its members from inflation and COVID-19 effects. In a move likely to jolt the Teacher Service Commission, KNUT Secretary General Wilson Sossion said the lowest raise in the next collective bargaining agreement should be at 120%, considering that the government had in 2017 signed to offer tutors between 50 to 60% increment. Sossion said yesterday there should be an annual increment of 5% of the basic salary. House allowance should be increased by 50%, and accommodation and night allowance by 50% of minimum basic salary. The commuter allowance should be increased by 50%, risk allowance by 10%, and hardship by 10%. This brings the total percent increment to 200. To push their case, the union wants their employer to immediately begin in negotiations for the 2021-2023 CBA. This 2017 to 2021 CBA, which is scheduled to end on June 30th next year, was signed in October 2016. They've also called for a comprehensive job evaluation for classroom tutors to ensure adequate compensation. He was saying the job evaluation was not done well prior to the current CBA. And he says this one only favors teachers in administrative positions, leaving the classroom tutor with little increment over the last 4 years. So they're demanding that this happens now.
Okay. 200%.
Right.
Percent.
Immediately. It's not a matter of let's talk about it or let's see what can be put into 2021 to 2023 CBA. We want that 200% now because inflation and COVID have affected things. So let's get that money in the bag now, and then we can start to talk about 2021, 2023. Right?
Wow.
It's also in the same week that the grade 4 standard 8 tests have been pushed to Wednesday. To cater for the holiday that's taking place tomorrow. So the exams will spill over, or rather the assessments will spill over till the 26th. So it will be interesting to see if this 200% is actually affected. Yes?
The others that were previously, have any of these things have been effected to completion?
No, in full, no.
Okay.
No.
So it's like the Constitution.
Right, but now this one, he said, we understand that the previous CBA was not completed, etc. But we're saying that between CBAs, right, there's that interim period. And we're saying that now, as we speak, because of COVID and inflation, we need this extra money. Accommodation, night allowance, commuter allowance. We need it now before we talk about CBA.
Okay. Now, the former Nairobi governor, Dr. Evans Kidero, spent 400 million shillings, apparently, in the last campaigns. Now, this is a story inside Kidero's 680 million shillings tax dispute with KRA. Former governor has cases running across all the courts, from the Magistrates Court to the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. There's a case. Go into any of those registries and you'll find Kidero, someone versus Kidero, Kidero versus someone. Now, it's this particular dispute between the KRA and the former governor. KRA says that Kidero ought to prove his source of income. There are discrepancies on what Kidero received and what was transferred by his lawyers to Vista Investment Limited. Vista purchases money was not a loan but income from unspecified sources and all that. And then he has basically just gone to court to explain how he spent 423 million shillings war chest and spending 418 million in the campaigns and being left with only 4 million shillings pocket change.
How much?
4 million only was left. From 423 million,
Okay.
only 4M was left. How did he spend this money? Kidero used 53 million to set up a campaign center to run his operations. 37 million was spent on his party ODM. To rent an office space for his political activities for 36 months, 7 million shillings. Research and polling, 8 million. 20 million shillings on the day of the launch of his bid. Nominations, 25 million. Media and publicity, 75 million. Then, doing publicity materials, 47 million. Now, you know those agents that go around, just mini agent or Kidero, so entering every polling center and monitoring the polling process. 55 million shillings reimbursement for travel costs. To monitor the election, Kidero spent 25 million, fueled 19 million shillings cars, repaired them with a similar amount of 19 million, entertained his campaigners with 6 million shillings. He had an additional 16 million as capital expenditure. In the court documents, he attaches a list of all the people he invited to his fundraiser. Those are the same people who contributed the millions, and the list includes top honchos in business and politics. In the end, only 4 million shillings remained for a man who became the city's first governor in 2013 under the Dawaya Nairobi catchphrase and lost that election in 2017. Small monies tells you, and this is just Nairobi County, where you basically need a war chest of close to 500 million shillings to campaign.
That is what is reported.
Yep.
If you consider what actually takes place, one gets the impression that it is a lot more than that.
It is a lot more.
Yes.
That 500 million is nothing.
Yes.
You want to be governor of Nairobi, you need $1 billion. Close to.
Let's
Just
start,
to get elected.
Let's start with $1 billion, and then let's see where you get off from there. That is Nairobi.
Who are ready kuongeza?
Yes.
These are jokes, man.
Well, the thing is this. The stage for our electioneering is set by the politicians. They are the ones who set up this stage for competing as to who can spend more and who can bribe more and who can give more money. They are the ones who set the stage. So, with every election, the ante is upped. There are more people who are aware that money is being given, and so there are more people who expect.
For example, what would the launch of a campaign, a launch event, cost 20 million shillings?
Oh, no. Launch, start
Means
with
what?
venue. Okay?
Higher venue.
Okay, now, let me begin with the big word, logistics.
Okay.
Okay? Venue, a PR system,
Tent,
sound,
PA,
Sound.
screens,
all that. Then
lights.
it is incomplete if there are no people. Okay? Now, these
So
people...
you're buying people.
No.
You have to bring people.
Just like you
hire
They have to
bring...
be ferried and fed.
Just like you hire tents, there are people who specialize in ensuring that the sort of crowd you want... arrives.
Mobilizers.
Yes, they are mobilizers.
All right.
And it's a package deal. What would you like them to chant? Okay? Is there anyone in particular you want them to boo? Should that person come to the stage? Okay?
And they will look good if they are all wearing uniform
Yes.
t-shirts,
You will buy.
T-shirts.
You will pay for those t-shirts.
hats.
Okay? And if you want them to sing a particular song, you're going to have to pay the person who's going to teach them that song with your name. Tawala so and so Tawala.
Yes.
Okay?
Now can
So-
you see where the
so 20 M just
million
goes
is
like that.
going?
No, it's
20
kidogo money.
million- 20 million has just gone.
For a one event.
Yes. And you want to make sure you keep your word because you may need this same outfit for yet another event. And remember, when you see large crowds in this country, all right, please understand that yes, they may want to listen to what you have to say, but there are also very many people who don't have very much to do with their time. And it doesn't harm you to simply go and listen to what somebody's going to say. It forms part of your entertainment for that particular day. So you can discuss and say, I was there and I heard what so-and-so said. And then there's this little thing that you also consider, because you hear that at this rally sometimes people get money. Who knows? Now that's the category of who knows. Some of that money may actually end up in your hands and eventually in your pocket. Again, who knows? If a leader of a religious group who went to visit the deputy president got back home and he was being told, Chief, that money you got.
Where's our share?
Our share. So
20 million is looking a little bit.
Does that 20 million sound to like a lot of money?
Yeah.
And this is the great city of Nairobi.
Yeah. You see, like you said, that whole tone is set by the politician.
They set it up. So when a politician...
Because other
Yes.
events with similar number of people would cost far less than that.
Look, if you go to watch a football match, you get crowds. The crowds pay to go and watch that game. And
they
still,
buy their own
and
food.
they entertain, they buy their own food, they spend their own money. Here you've reversed it. You are supposed to be talking to these people to give them hope, and you're paying them to give them hope. Does that sound logical to you?
It does not, unfortunately.
Just think about it. But that is the platform on which our politicians have decided to
This is how to run
to
affairs.
ply their trade, yes. So when they complain that, we're always being asked for money, it is you who set up that particular model. So by all means,
Carry on.
yes.
Okay.
So, the Nakuru Level 5 hospital has suspended elective surgeries for the next 2 weeks as COVID-19 cases among medics at the facility continue to rise. Union officials claim that more than 20 health workers have contracted the virus, with the hospital now banning visitors to stem further infections at the facility, which also serves Kericho, Baringo, Nyandarua, Samburu, and Narok counties. It is prudent for us to cancel elective surgeries and move them further on the calendar. However, the hospital is still conducting emergency surgeries and other urgent procedures, according to the health executive Gishoki Karaoke. He said the move was meant to the move was meant as part of measures to safeguard the well-being of patients. The workers' unions yesterday raised the alarm over the increasing cases of infections among medics, even as it emerged that an intern had died of the virus.
Page 14. Kenya made medical ventilators near reality.
Near.
Near
Page 14 of.
of
Daily
the
business.
daily business. As in business daily. Okay. Now, the ventilator that will retail at 1 million shillings is 3 times cheaper than the important ones. Now, this is a locally developed medical ventilator, and it's set to enter clinical trials. Meaning they've set it, but now they want to try it and see how well it will work. Okay, the inventors are Nira Hirani, John Jason, and Dr. Ashit Shah. And they invested 1.2 million towards setting up the special purpose vehicle for this. But remember, we've had other people in this very, very country coming up with inventions of the same.
There's a team from KU,
Yes,
others.
yes, they
Which
have.
they said would be viable.
But yes, and we haven't as yet heard how far that has gone. So it isn't just one company, it's just reported. But there are other individuals who've been coming up with this. Now, tell me, all these monies we keep talking about, surely these are called startups now.
Yeah.
If money was given to such people to actually propel this thing, because what they are putting forward is clearly cheaper than what, would it not achieve these goals that we keep hearing about, getting people employed, encouraging local enterprise, and more so saving us money and getting the product locally? And could this same thing not have been done for the test kits?
Of course it could have.
Yes, so that this thing of we can't find them, they're not there, they're playing hide and seek with us, and yet other people keep testing in the millions.
And they get them.
And,
somehow.
well, if the worst came to the worst, we had the option of asking them, guys, this place where you get yours,
Tell us where.
Can we piggyback or can we give you the money?
Can
and
we
then
give you
buy
money?
for
You
us,
buy
you
you
buy
buy it for
yours.
and buy it for us?
on our behalf.
But somehow those options don't seem to be viable in our case.
No.
Was a ventilator among the things that were being showcased at Manyani when this
I'm not
industrial
certain.
complex? So we saw very many things.
I'm not certain.
Guns, drones. Ventilator not among them.
I'm not certain. I did not.
I didn't see a
I
ventilator.
didn't read about it, and I didn't see.
Yeah, it could be something that then this military industrial complex considers. Adopt these guys, see how you can work with them.
I mean,
Or
if,
even
if,
others
if
that have been doing the research.
if the military are already beginning to manage an abattoir, and no, I don't mean this humorously. I mean it literally.
And garbage in the city.
And garbage in the
toilets.
city. Surely, a ventilator.
Shouldn't be too much of a big
No,
deal.
it isn't, because it involves health, and they are human beings like the rest of us, and this is something that could come handy. Remember, these are people who go out to fight
Yeah.
with guns. Guns, shoot, kill, that sort of thing. So,
They get it. City. You don't come again.
The military is managing a kichinjio.
but that's what they're doing. Are they not? Have I put this in a way that is not correct?
It's what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
So, surely.
Shouldn't be too much.
And all they're doing is just overseeing the people who are actually doing the work.
If they can manage a kichinjio, surely they can. Time for a break.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
12 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's continue the conversation. DCI and spy agency may soon control Harambe. So you see that military and kichinjio? Harambe. That you're doing a Harambe for what? They'll come in. For a long time, chaos has ruled the conduct of fundraisers, from money laundering to bouncing checks and misuse of proceeds. Now MPs want to bury this mess. But will they succeed? There's a move in Parliament, and actually there's been a bill. The National Intelligence Service and the DCI will now vet and process Harambe applications. If proposals tabled in Parliament pass through, the two security organs are members of the County Policing Authority that will also investigate any complaints of misuse of funds or any issue relating to conduct of public elections. The body created under Section 41 of the National Police Service Act will also audit such monies to catch people stealing Harambe collections or using such functions to launder illegally acquired funds. The other members of this team will be the county governor, two elected members nominated by the county assembly, the chairperson of the county security committee, and at least 6 other members appointed by the governor from various community groups. The proposals are contained in the Public Fundraising Appeals Bill 2019, sponsored by the National Assembly Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, chaired by Ndaragwa MP Jeremiah Kioni. The report on the bill was tabled in Parliament last week, at a time when the state has been cracking the whip on political gatherings, including fundraisers. So, this is one area where politicians are looking at things from the political lens. They seem to have broken down Harambe and seen Harambe fundraiser is politicians going to give money to fundraisers. So you can see the way the route they're taking. You want to seek political office, you appear in Harambe. You want to cement your position in your current political office, you appear in Harambe. And then you go and issue bouncing checks. Or you go, and that's a place where you're laundering money. You've stolen money from the public, you go into Harambe and you say, nimepeana 1 million. And then you shall say, I donated money to worthy causes. And that money ends up coming back to you in a clean fashion. So, trying to fight that, they come up with this bill. But you forget that we have very many other harambees that are conducted at a local level. You know, you have somebody who is in hospital, and people just come back together and they say, you know, so and so is in hospital. How can we assist?
Yeah.
Those are also harambees. So at what point do you now...
Where do you draw the line?
do you draw the line and
Yeah.
govern? These harambees have to report to this particular committee that has all these people, and then the other harambe that has politicians and people that need to be vetted.
Yeah.
You know, there is what they're saying is something that has happened from time immemorial. In fact, it is considered a standard operating procedure for anybody who wishes to even give the electorate in his region the impression that he is interested in a political position to hold harambees, whether it is for a football team, whether it is for a netball team, whether it's for a church building, a nursery, whatever it is, some health fund. This is something that people have done from time immemorial. But this money laundering bit is the new angle to it. But what it tells me is that clearly there is a lot of money that requires laundering.
Yep. And this is an avenue. The truth of the matter is that they have identified something that even they know is happening. Right?
And they've seen it for some time.
And they've seen it for some time. And they know clearly that there's a way that money comes here that... and you see, even church leaders... Remember, Archbishop Ole Sapit at one point led the chorus by saying, if you want to come and donate money to a church, you must declare the source of your wealth.
Declare the source of this wealth.
And you don't come with cash. Come with a check that we can clearly trace that this is who gave us this money.
This money.
Right? It's because there's something that's happening in this. We know there is an issue with harambees. The only issue is then how is this the best way to regulate this? Is the best way to weed out the bad seeds?
Yeah.
The bad weeds.
Seeds even.
You know, the thing is, if you look at, if I consider what you've just read or what has been documented in the media, we cannot say that the government is not trying to make an effort. They are. The only problem is that it will receive a twist. It will be said that this is a measure that is being taken to favor certain people and it's being taken to disadvantage certain people.
Certain other people.
Yes. That is the way it will be looked at. And yet, the reality is, if you look at just the way in which our political atmosphere is actually building up, right? The one ingredient that is a constant and keeps coming up is money being spent.
Yeah.
All right? At different levels.
Yeah.
Whether it's at a church function, whether it's a school, whatever the case is. But of significance, not just the money. The quantities that are being spent are quantities that people aren't accustomed to seeing.
Mind-blowing stuff.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And that is part of the reason why you're seeing all this commotion. Now, if you take this and place it within the understanding of what's happening in the country right now, it's a very, very, very potent weapon.
True.
Very potent.
True.
Right now, people are really genuinely suffering more than they've suffered probably in their lives.
True.
Yes.
True.
For example, Jeremiah Kioni, when he was tabling this, he said, the committee noted that there has been an abuse of the harambe process with people raising money for social status, enrichment, and some raising funds for non-existent causes. And even where there were justifiable reasons, there was no transparency or accountability. The harambe spirit is being misused and abused despite it being of great help in moving our country forward. What we want is for them to start being audited by the Auditor General for easy accountability. It's calling for that accountability. When someone comes with a briefcase full of cash and says, I've donated millions, when people just sit down at a small dinner, a fundraiser, it's a dinner, it's taking place over 2 hours. Like, remember the Mama Ida fundraiser? And millions is raised in a short period of time.
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions are raised in a very short period of time. Then it raises the question, so can we audit this? Can we go back? Can we... But maybe the way they're going around it, saying bring in NIS, bring in DCI at this particular stage.
This is where the discussion about the details of our constitution comes in. Because I believe even when it comes to matters of donations or harambes, our laws are very clear about how we should go about some of these things. And in cases where the law is silent, the way I understand it is this. If indeed you want to streamline these processes, well, you can bring in the police, you can... Again, why don't you just halt all these activities to start off with? And then put out guidelines and say, if what we have is inadequate, this is what we are going to do. If this is what you want to do, this is the process you're going to follow. You don't even need to bring in the police. You just halt it and say, from
this
today,
time moving forward,
we are not going to do this.
Yeah.
My
This
only
is the
beef
manner in which we're
is-
going to carry this out.
This is not the first time. In 2003, there was a committee that was even chaired by, I think Koigi was the chair or something, that was also relooking and reviewing harambees and the conduct of harambees. Same issues of misuse of harambees as avenues for political mileage and for laundering. Same. Those are many years ago, 17 years ago. We are still having the same conversation now. Something needs to happen.
Was
to
it not
address that
even
concern.
understood at some point that, look, there is a clear understanding, it appears, among the political leadership that very many of the dictates that are laid down are not dictates. They, as you like putting it, they're suggestions. Meaning you can consider, or abiding by it.
I'm just throwing it out here.
Yes.
You make up your own mind.
Yeah, but it's not really a must. It's like the court issues a certain edict, a certain pronouncement. Hey, you have a choice. You don't really have to listen to the courts.
Yep.
You can ignore the courts and do what you like. Now, the problem with all these things is that the citizenry watches. So now when you tell them, this COVID is still with us, they tell you, at what?
Is it?
Is
Is
it?
that not gone?
Where?
Are you not the guys who've come and called this rally? Or did we call the rally ourselves and asked you to come? It is you who told us that you are coming to our area, and it's you who said you want to talk to us.
Yep.
So, yet COVID is there, and yet you know that we will come in large numbers, but you're telling us. So, indeed, one plus one, this one is equal to 2.
Yeah.
They can't be COVID because you seem to know something that we don't seem to know. And do you see those leaders when they're in those crowds putting on even a face mask?
The leaders themselves? Oh.
Why?
So, you want to tell then the citizen that there's COVID. They'll ask you which one.
Which COVID?
The people that we follow are not adhering to anything
Which
COVID.
one?
So where is that from?
Yeah, Trump was of that view, and we know where that landed him, didn't we? And he was of that particular
He said that he
leaning.
still argues that he got COVID now because of wearing a mask.
How far can you push an agenda?
So
And then
Trump, you can push
yes,
it
and
very
then if
far.
you look at
people who are wearing
his
masks
advisors
around
and
the
all the people around him, literally anyone who's close to Trump, including his own wife, has contracted COVID.
Yeah.
And yet he still wants to give the impression it doesn't exist.
Come on, it's something. It'll pass. It'll come and go. It'll come and go. It'll pass. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here because we want to talk about the Building Bridges initiative and the report that's expected to be handed over to President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga in a couple of days' time. Already, Raila has said, people prepare yourselves because reggae is coming back. We'll be having the BBI rallies and maybe even going up to a point of a referendum, according to what Raila is saying. We require and we need some constitutional changes for us to be able to have a better Kenya. This is what he says. So we want to understand what exactly is this BBI really, and does it really represent what the leaders are saying? We'll also be live on KTN Home from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And also, we are still live on www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It's now 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Okay, let's take a look at what's going on Jogger Road this morning. As you're getting into the city, it's slowing down right around the City Stadium roundabout, and that's all traffic going towards industrial area or then towards the CBD. So that's clogging up right now. Thika Road is also moving slowly from Muthaiga towards the Pangani Tunnel at about 10 minutes ago or so. So that's moving slowly also. So we also see slowing down of traffic on Mombasa Road. We saw that it had already built up all the way from the Weybridge at Mlolongo earlier this morning. And now that we see, as the minutes tick by, that is moving on. All right, so there is an accident on Waiakiwe, unfortunately, right at Muthiga, and that is causing some traffic as they're trying to get into the city then via Waiakiwe. So if you're headed in that direction, please keep caution, because you will need to be careful. Inbound on Arwings Quebec, clear at Kilimani Primary School all the way towards Yaya Center, and then as you get towards Valley Road, you should be fine. So we see pockets of traffic everywhere you look this morning. You need to take it easy. Plus, send us a message on Spice FM KE, that's Twitter, and send us a text on 40127 if you're stuck anywhere. Let's keep it moving. It's Monday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way
It's
to start your day.
At 7 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of The Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We are worldwide on spicefm.co.ke. We are also live on KTN Home for the next 2 hours. Before we begin the hour, C.T. Muga, you'll remind us today's proverb.
If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito.
If you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito.
Mm-hmm.
It'll show you
That you're not.
that you're not too small to make a difference.
After all, what does it do?
Might has
So
nothing to do with
before you
size.
squash it, it'll keep you awake a good minute.
Well, you need to find it first before that happens. But by that time, it'll have achieved. You will be awake.
It would have achieved its goal.
Yes, because you will be awake, wide awake. And that is not the purpose for which you go to bed, to stay
Yeah.
wide awake.
Yeah. Hey, all right. Now let's talk about the Building Bridges initiative, right? So we know that after the handshake in 2018 between the president and the leader of ODM, Raila Odinga, they then decided to come up with the Building Bridges initiative. They set up a team. They asked the team to collect views from various stakeholders and come up with a report on what is it that needs to happen. They had a nine-point agenda on what needs to happen to address the issues that are affecting the country, especially that we have this kind of issues every time we have an election. There's serious disagreement. There appears to be getting to a point where we almost want to break apart and then find a way out of it. But how can we resolve this? The committee produced a report, and we saw the report. And then after that, they went to validate that report and so fine-tune it. And that's when, just before the coronavirus happened, we had a series of BBI rallies that were taking place around the country. Started with the Kisii, we had Kakamega, we had Mombasa, we had Makueni, and they were going around the country, Meru. And with that, they were slowly even moving away from being issues discussing the BBI report and what people would want to discuss. They started becoming political battlegrounds. So we're coming to say, these people are against us, they're against our thinking of BBI, and then the other group would come and say, those who are talking about this BBI, it's not about individuals and personalities, it's about the country, but not really discussing the issues of the country. At what point do you get to understand what BBI is all about?
I think the point begins with actually understanding the contents of the BBI and understanding that this is the final, this has gone through all the processes, and what is being presented is what is intended for the public to consume. It begins with that. If we discuss what has been presented or what was given as, should we say, a draft copy, draft copies can change, right? But the gist of it was, if I were to understand and if I'm to quote what the president was reported as having said yesterday was, there are all these issues that we keep having in this country. And one of the things that we want to consider is we want to make sure that we settle some of these issues once and for all. We want a situation where this winner-takes-all mentality, which is corrosive and poisonous, we want to cure it. We want to make sure that this issue does not arise again. And this BBI, among other things, will help us settle that. That is the gist of what the president is quoted as having said. Now, anyone listening to that who says, how can this possibly be a bad thing? Because in all honesty, if you look at the political tensions that we have, it arises from what the president has clearly stated. But because it is considered to be a political move, it will have a political response. And the political response will not be to support it, but to dismantle it as much as one possibly can, and to find ways of finding fault with it at every given turn.
It's also possible that this initially very clear and straightforward agenda of let's look at what is it that ails us can also be overtaken by politics, can also be hijacked by politics and political agenda. When you get to a point where the issue now is we need to change our constitution, who says we need to change our constitution? Who's told you? Is that what the people have said?
You see,
did the report at any point say constitutional amendment? When it becomes that is the main issue, that now we need to change our constitution because this constitution is not serving us well, because this is how we need to go. We haven't gotten to a point where the discussion has percolated down to these are our issues. We are in agreement that these are the issues. Some of these issues need constitutional cure. Others do not require constitutional cure. They require policy cure or legislative cure or just a mind shift. When we now move it all down and say, you know what, we need a referendum. We need to change our constitution. We need so that we can cure our country. But that's the same conversation we had 10 years, 15 years ago. For the last 30 years, we've been talking about we need to change the constitution.
We did change the constitution. We actually got a new one.
Yes.
But what I think is being referred to as an amendment, constitutions get amended all the time.
True.
You see, the moment you mention amending the constitution, unfortunately, in Kenya, what is seen to be at the back of the minds of those who want to amend it is something nefarious, something which isn't good, something that good cannot simply emanate from. That's really what we're discussing. If indeed the amending of a constitution is just precisely what it says, it can, that in itself cannot be negative. The question is, what is it being amended for?
Yep.
And is there a need for it to be amended?
Now, without those questions answered, is where then you would get that feeling where people think, okay, the only reason why this is being amended is then to favor some people or to favor some kind of dispensation. Without you giving the information as per what all this entails, can you really blame the pocket of people who think in that manner? Unfortunately, you can't. I mean, it's it creates a vacuum again, and in order to fill it, if you don't fill it with the right information, people will fill it with what their perceptions are. And this is what you have currently going on in this country. It's polarized right now, whereas certain people believe that BBI is to fulfill a certain agenda, and others feel that it is the thing that is going to take the country to the next level. Now, how do you change the minds on one side to the other if you don't give information?
Even if you give information, there are those who will take a position which they will not move from. Remember, we're talking about political narratives, and political narratives serve a certain purpose, and those who are putting forward that narrative know exactly what it is that they hope to achieve. If it is, I want a political position, and I know that there is a document that proposes to bring about some changes, if I think that those changes don't favor me, how on earth do you think I'm going to say, I will not support that particular document? I won't support it, even if there is good in it. But if it doesn't suit my purposes, I will not support it.
That's for the politicians. And then now there's the public who is expected to participate in accepting to the changes.
True, Eric, but the public often tends to listen to the debate and what the politicians say. That's what gives them a cue as to which direction they can follow.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also there's a point where then the public ought to have participated in that, so that
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. Remember the issue of Wanjiko, and this is a political process. It was all because of that. Because some sections of the political class at that point felt that we don't need to involve everybody in creating a new constitution or in writing a constitution. And then there's the other side that felt that no, this needs to be a fully participatory process where everybody is involved. So now the balance strikes again. If it's about the people, have the people been widely consulted? Have the people completely and widely participated in this conversation and this discussion about what ails Kenya and what is the new Kenya that we want? What is the new Kenya that we want 100 years from today? Because that is what we were discussing. What is the new Kenya that we want to moving forward? How do we address what is currently not working and make it work? All of us. How do we build a nation? One of the things that the BBI report initially said is, you know what, we need to get to a point where we feel like we're building a nation. It's important to have that conversation at that point as well. Let's bring in somebody who has participated in this conversation as well, and this is the governor of Kisumu County, Professor Nyong'o. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Good morning, Prof.
Morning. Morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
So, Prof, BBI, the report came out, it was launched, and then there was what was expected to be a validation process and a fine-tuning process. Rallies took place. Now we expect that the team has, because their term has ended, will be presenting its report very soon to the principals, the president, and the leader of ODM. There's the debate. Before even going to the politics of it, why is it that we need to have this conversation around the BBI, building bridges?
Well, I think we must accept that we have problems in the nation. I think so. I don't think anybody would bury his head in the sand like the proverbial ostrich and pretend that we do not have problems we need to sort out in the nation. The BBI came out of about 10 or 15 issues that President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga came up with when they sat down for several hours and discussed the differences among themselves, the differences that are emerging in the Kenyan nation after the last election, and thought that it was time that, first of all, at their level, that they close ranks and submit their individual interests to the national concern and come up with a modus operandi of building a united, democratic, and developmental nation. And I think that those principles were not really challenged that they came out with. I think what was challenged was the idea that there needs to be a relook at the Constitution and make sure that the Constitution safeguards to avoid some of the pitfalls we've had since the 2010 Constitution, which we believed, actually we still believe, is quite an advancement over what we had in the past. But still, the idea of contested bitter elections, contested bitter politics, polarization of the nation on issues that can be resolved, I thought that was something that is worth looking into and subjecting to national debates. Now, I really believe, rather than have a zero-sum game where we say either the BBI or nothing, or I don't support the BBI, or it doesn't really help. I think the most important thing is after the validation process, let's see what the document comes out and what it's proposing, and then debate it as such. But I really think that an a priori rejection of the BBI just because it is proposed by Raila Amolo Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta initially is not really useful. Somebody has to propose something, especially if you're in a leadership position. You have to propose something, like Nyeri proposed the Arusha Declaration, and people say, yeah, let's see if the nation can be based on the basis of the Arusha Declaration. So let's give it a chance. Let's see what comes out, and then debate it.
Prof, there's some people there. I mean, there's a particular side already, and we talk about polarization around this whole debate. And there are those who already have picked a hard position against the BBI for several reasons, saying that, and one of them that has come out is that to change the constitution to favor some positions. What would you have to say about that? Even if we're saying give it a chance and let it come out, people have already taken position.
Yeah, but that's unfortunate. I mean, there's nothing I can do about that myself. And really, I mean, these are adults over 18 years of age, and they're entitled to their positions. But I don't think it is rational. I mean, just to take a position and say, I stand here, I don't move, no matter what proposals are made. To me, it's rather, that's what I said, is a zero-sum game. It doesn't really help in any kind of national discourse, or any other form of discourse for that matter.
Prof, when you talk about, and you've raised it very well, you've talked about every time we have an electoral cycle, then we get into this point of serious polarization of the country. If you look at the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and you participated very well in pushing for the Constitution, in the journey towards that new Constitution, looking at the Constitution, is there anything in the Constitution that then could be said is a weak point that allows for this polarization to take place?
Yeah, if you look at the series of articles I wrote in both the Standard and the Star, and I published a book last year in October called Presidential or Parliamentary Democracy, Choices to be Made. I outlined very clearly some of the choices that we can make to make sure that we avoid these polarizing elections and these elections that lead to national divisions that sometimes look incurable. In that book, I propose very clearly, and I'm not saying that people must take lock, stock, and barrel what I say, but what I'm saying is that in the kind of society we live in, a society with cultural differences which are natural, a society where there's a very uneven development since independence, a society where we have developed dogmatic positions on political points which are polarizing. It is rather difficult to expect a presidential system to deal with those issues effectively, because presidential election again are zero-sum thing, either I win or you lose, and sometimes when the institutions that manage elections, like the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, let's leave alone the word independence. Let's just say there's election on the Boundaries Commission, because its independence is quite often questionable. Now, in that kind of society, when you have an election that leads to a zero-sum decision that only one person is elected president, they has enormous, or she has enormous powers, you expect people to be very resentful, especially when the Electoral Commission itself doesn't do a good job. And you can't ascertain that an Electoral Commission will do a good job given what we have had in the past since independence, the last 50 or so years. So we must have a system which gives room to much more diverse pluralism in the choice of leadership, so that there's an attempt to develop a consensus at the national level, so that after the election you don't have a winner-take-all situation. And that is real. You cannot pretend it is not there. All kinds of presidential systems face it. Even in the U.S., you saw during the last election, they found that this winner-take-all, really, that is demonstrated by the Electoral College more than the popular vote, is not good for them. They begin questioning the logic of having an Electoral College, especially in a world where information is now very versatile with the social media. You can't pretend we don't live in this world. We must take these things into account and debate our future based on the reality. So if the BBI can offer us the opportunity to debate these things agnostically, without taking kind of rigid position a priori, it will help us.
It would seem that if we're looking at the country being able to get kind of this balm or this treatment for what has plagued it in the past, when you talk about contested bitter elections, when you talk about issues that can actually be resolved, and this would be an avenue for such, it would seem then that it would be something that the general populace would need to understand. And having been initiated into this from the very beginning, it would seem that many Kenyans just don't know what this BBI is. beyond a tool that is being passed about between two dissenting sides? How
That's a
should
really
have people been made of the process, been made aware of the process?
That's a very elite position, by the way. Elite people seem to make a statement that the people don't understand. I'm telling you, the people understand more than you think. I mean, I listen to FM stations in my own county, in my own language, people debating this. And people are very aware of the issue, by the way. And the people say, bring that document. Let us see what it looks now. After we listen to the rallies, after we argued with our politicians in the villages, after we argued with the trade unionists and so on, they are not that idiotic, you know. This idea that the people don't understand, we disagree, being posed in the people, is a very elitist political position that elites take from a very ivory tower positions, you know.
I think the issue really is not about people understanding, is whether people's views have been taken directly. Remember, even the time when you among the people who were pushing for Wanjiku-driven process rather than a politician-driven process, is because of the understanding that Wanjiku knows what Wanjiku needs. And Wanjiku knows what Wanjiku wants. So has Wanjiku participated extensively in this particular process, the BBI process?
You are assuming that I accept that philosophy of Wanjiku. Politics don't take that place that way. There's not a typical Wanjiku, by the way. We have people. You can either have a popular process, okay, or a people-based process. In other words, you discuss, you subject it to public discourse, okay. Public discourse means that every individual has an opportunity to listen and to say something, okay. And saying something, you know, it's not saying a chorus. It's not saying in a kind of a Tower of Babel. It's said by creating institutions where people can express their ideas, and that is good. Those are the things called pressure groups, interest groups, you know. Societies, you know. And when people come into those kinds of settings, they have a kind of environment where they can express and exchange ideas. But this idea there's a kind of an anomalous Wanjiku somewhere in public which says they are his or her mind doesn't exist in any society anyway.
So that, coming back into those, the pressure groups, the small groups where people come and they express their views, are those the ones that would say have driven this BBI process? Because if you look at, for example, the CKRC process, it considered some of those. There were those public hearings where now the small groups would come and present their views. And then even in the validation process, the small groups would go and present their views. In the validation process, we've seen it was mostly politician-driven.
That's not true, because here in Kisumu, I know that they were sitting in a hotel here, and various groups were going there to express their views. I was the last as the governor to go and express my views there, because really you don't expect the governor to come first. I said, no, listen to the people first. You call me when you're finished. And you should ask the BBI people for their report. Let them give you a list of groups that presented their views, a list of groups that sent their views. I hope you sent yours, or from Standard Group if you are concerned. I mean, don't also just sit in your office and wait. I mean, if you're a participating citizen, you should be aggressive. Don't wait to be approached. Politics is not a wedding party, you know.
Professor, many of the solutions that the BBI is allegedly proposing to bring about are considered to be of a political nature. In your view, what are some of the economic benefits that the BBI would bring about?
I hate to interrupt here, Prof. Before you answer that question, you'll take that question as we come out of this break. It's time for us to take a break at 24 minutes after 7. We are live on Spice FM, on KTN Home, and online. Speaking with us is Professor Nyong'o, the governor of Kisumu County. We are talking about BBI. Is BBI really the solution that we need as a country at this point in time? Are the contents of the BBI, we don't know them yet because the report hasn't been made public after going through validation and fine-tuning process. But looking at the initial draft report and looking at the process that has happened so far, is this the route that we ought to take, and what kind of support is this? When you come back out of this break, you'll respond to C.T. Muga's question. 24 minutes after 7. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Mimi siwezi kunywa chai kama haina maziwa. Hiyo si chai hata. So when it started giving me stomach problems, nilijikaza tu. But my wife realized I was struggling and decided to get me some alternatives. My friend, I tried all those plant-based substitutes. Name them. Let me tell you, there is nothing that tastes as good as real cow's milk. So when I had Gold Crown has lactose-free version of the real thing, I had to try. I was amazed. It is real cow's milk, kweli kweli, but without any of the discomfort. Asante Gold Crown.
Try Gold Crown lactose-free milk today to enjoy the richness of all-natural milk without the discomfort of indigestion. 100% cow's milk, 100% lactose-free. Easy to digest.
In the face of COVID-19, life has been adversely affected, with nearly all schools in Kenya lacking basic hand-washing facilities, affecting more than 19 million children. Together with Davis and Shatleaf and True Black, we, the Standard Group, have partnered to collectively unite other corporates and individuals to join the initiative towards setting up basic sanitation facilities around the country. For more information, send an SMS to the short code 40616 or email standwithkenya@standardmedia.co.ke. Time to come together for tomorrow. It's our future. A partnership by Davis and Shatleaf and True Black and the Standard Group.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
There is a chance of rain in Nairobi today. We'll see highs of 24 and lows of 15. Nyeri weather's cloudy at 15 degrees, highs of 23 today with a chance of showers later on. 21 degrees a high and lows of 14 in Nakuru. It's currently mostly cloudy at 15. Mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 14 degrees, highs of 19 and lows of 13, and a chance of thunderstorms later on in the day. It looks like a wet afternoon moving on west in Kisumu. 21 degrees and mostly cloudy at the moment. And in Kakamega, it looks like it will be rain. Highs of 23 and lows of 16 in Kakamega. Looking then into Mombasa, it's 26 degrees and partly cloudy, highs of 30 and lows of 24. Malindi is mostly sunny for most of the day. Those sunny conditions will last with a high of 30 and lows of 25. Outside of Kenya into Kampala, it's mostly cloudy at 19, highs of 26 and lows of 18, with a chance of rains there as well. It looks like a partly cloudy morning in Dar es Salaam at 25 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 23, and no rain today. Mostly sunny in Johannesburg at 18 degrees, highs of 32 and lows of 17. We're looking at a partly cloudy day in Lagos at 31 degrees. That'll be the high with lows of 24.
Chilled Spice. Traffic.
There's traffic all the way through from Garden City on Thika Road this morning, and it's going all the way towards the city centre. And that is going to be a little bit slow today as from what we are seeing. So take a look at Thika Road as you're either going or coming in both directions, moving very, very slowly, as is on Mombasa Road. All the way from the Way Bridge, it's crawling along this morning, guys. Monday morning means that everybody's back and going into the city. The construction on the road doesn't help either, so you need to take that into consideration as you plan your journey. Yes. Getting into the CBD via Uhuru Highway is also going to look slow. It's piling up there all the way through to Westlands. We also have on Waiyaki Way an accident this morning that makes traffic slow down some. So wherever you're going, you need to be careful, but let us know what you see. You get stuck somewhere, let us know. The Eastern and Southern bypass is open for use this morning. Let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter or text us on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The conversation continues. This is the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. This and every morning, Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga. And joining us this morning is the Governor of Kisumu County, Professor Nyong'o. We are talking about BBI. As we went into the break, C.T., you would ask the question. Just repeat the question again for the Prof.
Well, the question is, if we were to look at what has been discussed in the public domain regarding the BBI, a lot of the discussions around the politics or about politics, my question was, what, in His Excellency's opinion, are some of the economic benefits that the BBI proposes to bring about?
One of them is, one of the biggest advancements in the 2010 Constitution was devolution. And then the principle of implementing devolution so that devolved units can get enough resources to undertake the functions specified in Schedule 4 of the Constitution was based on allocation of what is called division of revenue. And the percentage proposed in the 2010 Constitution has proved rather inadequate. I think BBI has proposed that at least 35% of the national budget will be devoted to revenues going to the counties. I don't think 35% myself is enough. If you look at other jurisdictions, usually it ranges from 45 to 75 because that would mean changing Schedule 4 of the Constitution and giving the counties more functions. I think this is a very valid discussion to have, given what devolved units have done since 2013. On the average, we've just undertaken a survey, an analysis of what we call post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy for counties, county by county. Kenya Institute of Public Policy Research and Analysis, and that proposal is validated. And we have found what the counties have done and what they are capable of doing given more resources. Now, that report is going to be launched soon. And I think it can be a basis of discussion to go to BBI because I believe on evidence-based discussion, not speculation and emotion and so on. So that is something which is very important that needs to be looked at. The other issue is unequal development for historical reasons, what are usually called historical injustices. Now, the word injustice may be emotional, but it is ethically true. I mean, the historical injustices, people who made these decisions might not have been aware fully of the long-term consequences, but they have had serious consequences in terms of national development. And if you're going to now have national cohesion progressively, we have to address them. We cannot again bury our heads in the sand like proverbial ostrich and think they don't exist, or think that because they don't affect our region, it doesn't matter in the nation, but the nation in one unit. And the process of national integration is a very difficult process and something that at one point some section of society must make sacrifice so that it becomes a reality. That is a proposal in the BBI, and I know when they came to Kisumu, I discussed with them a very serious proposal, and sometimes they put glibly that it is between the high potential areas and low potential areas. Well, the idea of high potential area, low potential is no longer true. It might have been true at independence times, and indeed development has followed that. But now it's changing. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Kitui, for example, where Charity Gill is capable of putting up a Kekotech textile factory. And Bwana is doing a mango factory, and Tichilo here in Kakamega is one of the GIS most advanced centers in the nation. Now, you must know that if we put better resources, we will wake up potential in various parts of the country we are not aware of. And I think that when people just throw away the BBI with the bathwater saying that for politicians, it's kind of silly, if you ask me.
If you look at those that you've basically just mentioned, they're about entrenching devolution and making sure that devolution then works better to bring more service delivery to the people. Then there is a proposal by the political class to have a third tier of government. What's your position on that?
Well, you see, there's already a third tier of government in devolution, the regional blocks. Our proposal, my proposal, maybe I shouldn't say ours, but quite a number of governors share this with me, is that there are two ways of having integration: juridical integration and organic integration. You see, like the BBI is proposing juridical integration, where you are saying we want to establish a third level of evolution. I'd rather prefer the organic integration, which has come as a result of the regional box. That now needs some juridical interpretation, okay? So use the organic emergence of blocks, which reflect the reality in the regions and the economic demands of the regions and prerequisites in the region, and then turn it into law. My preference would be don't come with the third tier, which is completely irreverent to what has emerged organically.
You've also been a big proponent, as you talk about parliamentary system, parliamentary democracy, of proportional representation. And seeing that is one way of also better advancing the practice of our democracy. Explain that to us.
Well, look, proportional representation is not something which has fallen from, like manna from heaven. Proportional representation exists in reality in various countries, whereby in South Africa, for example, a party is given seats in parliament with respect to the number of votes it gets in an election. Okay, now that is proportional representation with regard to party strength in an electoral process. Proportional representation can also be seen in terms of certain social categories in society. I mean, women voters are making a very important point that, look, we are the majority of voters, okay, or we have a significant vote power in the nation that should be recognized as part of the political process. Now, you may decide in your constitution that, look, in order to reflect the demographic reality in our nation, we must apportion certain representation at various levels of government to women. How that is done will depend on how you want to do it. It can be done through party processes, which is the best, by the way, or what we are doing now, you just have votes counted and then you give women some. That is, to me, like a Christmas party present. But I think you use a much more political process like voter representation, and then look at women, the number of seats they need in the county assemblies or they deserve in county assemblies and parliament and so on. So that is a debate that should be carried out when the BBI comes out. What type of proportional representation do you have in Kenya? What can we learn from other jurisdictions? And what can we learn from our experience without me saying this is what we need to have in Kenya? No, I can't say, look, what we have in Kenya must reflect the social and political and cultural realities in Kenya. What kinds of demographic characteristics in our nation need to be represented proportionally in decision-making bodies?
Professor, you were part of a very integral part of the group of eminent Kenyans who spearheaded what then became our new constitution. I am certain that this discussion that we're now having came up about what sort of government we should have. What prevented us from actually bringing this to a reality?
Because Naivasha was a compromise thing. I mean, Naivasha put aside a lot of issues that we were very committed to. I'm telling you, we were there in the Prime Minister's boardroom when report came from Naivasha that we had decided the presidential system. I mean, you could hear the pin drop in that room. We were shocked, but we said, look, really, I was Secretary General of the party. I was not in Naivasha for that matter. I reclused myself from being in Naivasha because we wanted other voices to be heard. And the Secretary General, I must be in a position to arbitrate among various points of view in the party. But when they came with this presidential thing, I thought they were coming from some moon or something. I mean, really. But there it was. We decided, well, to begin going back now, it's it's rather difficult politically. The nation needs to move forward. We shall discuss these things subsequently. In any case, the opponents had said that the 20% of the constitution was not needed to be looked into. They said, well, let's wait and see when we can look at this 20%. Time has come to look at that 20%, and I don't know why people are holding very fast kind of dogmatic position that we oppose the BBI. Well, they say the 20% should be looked into. What's wrong with looking at that 20% now? Is it because you want to throw away the message with the messenger? It's not good throwing away the message with the messenger. I mean, the message must be carried by some messenger one way or the other. Like Jesus came with this message, he was crucified, but now we are following him all over the world, calling ourselves Christians. We are never even there.
Looking at changing the constitution, as you go down the road, other instances might come up whereby, the country as a whole says, well, okay, in order for this to work for us, the constitution must be changed. Or we need to look at making, an amendment here or there. Looking at a document that essentially leads or guides the people, do you advocate for constant changing, even when that has not been completed? In terms of its
but you see, a constitution is always a work in progress. Look at Switzerland. Every time I go to Switzerland, I find they are holding a referendum in one way or the other. The Swiss perhaps are the highest highest holding of referendum per capita in the world. I mean, just look at the history of every country. I mean, the constitution are not there like Kitnikai. They don't move. No, they move with history. Even the British, you remember, they entered the EU. Recently, they voted to get out of it. I mean, it was not easy, but history changes, and the constitution of nations and the political institutions which govern nations change over time. And one just needs to reasonably look at the reason being given for the need for that change and discuss it agnostically.
There are those that argue, Prof, that the clamor to make amendments to the Constitution is the failure or reluctance by the political class to implement some sections of the current Constitution. If you look at our current Constitution, if you were to grade our implementation, how would you rate it? 0 being very bad and 10 being very good.
By the way, the political class is not a homogeneous class. The political class is a divided class in all kinds of ways. So the phrase the political class sometimes is also very vague, by the way. Kenyans a phrase comes up and they cling to it as if it is immutable, Politicians, yes, that's a word I can respect. Politicians, yes, in various shades and descriptions, do not want certain sections of the Constitution to be implemented in full. And they have selfish reasons. And you have to look at, for example, the 15%, which is a very little percentage. Why is it that it should take 3 months in Parliament for it to be decided upon? Why? When you know that those 3 months that they pass, people are suffering on the ground, the services not being delivered. The county governments don't have the weapon to deliver those services. Any human being would say, look, these are our people, they vote for us, let's do this thing quickly so that they can have it. No. But the same politicians we're talking about will haggle over it for all kinds of reasons until cows come home.
So how do we then, as the citizens, protect ourselves from these politicians and their selfish interests, like you say? So when you see politicians in the forefront of leading amendments to the Constitution, and you look back and you ask yourself, have they implemented this Constitution truthfully and to the letter? But they are the ones that are clamoring for an amendment to the same Constitution. How do we trust the same politicians?
But we are saying they are the same citizens who vote them in. I mean, why are you excluding yourself from the responsibility? I mean, yes, it is not just the politician, you too. So you are not holy. You are part of the problem too. Because you don't want to understand the issues. You always take sides also, you see. So we must get involved in this all together, There must be a genuine national debate and responsible debate over the issues. Look, that's why if you know that the cake is too small to be eaten, find ways of baking it, make it bigger. I'll give you a proposal, for example. We know today that the historical reliance on growing our economies through the export of raw materials cannot work. The cake cannot be grown using that economic mode of development. We know today that when we gave up import substitution industrialization in the 80s because of pressure from the World Bank and the Bretton Woods institution, we did a mistake. We know today that if we do not have effective infrastructure in our nation, we cannot have proper economic integration and growth. We know that today. We must make decision, one, to build our infrastructure fast, forward. Secondly, to restructure the economy to make sure that we export manufactured goods. We make effective use of export processing zones, special economic zones that are being established to grow our economy. This requires a stable political system, not a political system that changes day and night. So that decision makers who made decisions yesterday are not decision makers who make decisions tomorrow. That's the reality. How do you create a system that will do this? If we don't have that concrete debate and we look at BBI in an emotional way, we shall not do it. We shall not be like Malaysia.
So, Professor, are we saying therefore that what the BBI will do is to try and correct some of these ills that have bedeviled us for the longest time? Is that what we're saying in a nutshell?
It should do that. As far as I'm concerned, from my discussion with them in Kisumu, it should do that. I'm waiting for that document to see how it does that. But I know for certain that what President Kenyatta is doing now in Kenya is exactly what Eisenhower did in the U.S. after the Second World War. He learned from the Germans that the Autobahn is a good thing for the U.S. He went to the U.S. and made it interstate highways. Whatever he called it, it could have called it Autobahn, but he didn't want to use that German word. He used English word, interstate highways. We need those kind of highways here in Kenya today as early as yesterday. We need infrastructure that will make it possible for our economy to grow. If Uhuru Kenyatta can do it, let him do it. If somebody else comes in and do it, let him do it in a political system that is stable. That doesn't matter who is on top, but that will continue with the economic model that will grow this economy and help our people.
If we look at some of the proposals, the political proposals that have been discussed very many times, creation of several posts at the national level so that you enhance cohesion. This is, saying if we want a parliamentary system, then you have a prime minister, whether powerful or not, then you have a couple of deputies. But this brings in the wider representation of various regions in the country. Is this one of those things that you would advocate for as creation of a stable system?
If it is indeed, it can do that, why not? I mean, why did the French have a president and a prime minister? Why did the British decide to retain feudalism in terms of the Queen, though they were a democratic state? Why? If you look, just read Shakespearean plays. The idea of democracy occurred to Shakespeare 400 years before democracy came. But Shakespeare was at the same time a loving citizen of feudalism, because he saw feudalism in Britain, not the feudal economic system, the political feudalism, maintaining the kingship as a unitary factor for the British people. And so, contrary to what you may think, Britain is a parliamentary democracy, but with a queen. If you went and told the British abolish the queenship, they would say no. It's a center of cohesion of the British people. So we must find out where our center of cohesion is going to be when we have been lacking this cohesion since independence. If we cannot hold that debate, we are foolish. Come up with your proposal. What is going to be the center of cohesion of this nation? My proposal was that we have a parliamentary system. That proposal of mine doesn't seem to be acceptable. I'm not God. So if another proposal can come which will create national cohesion, I'll be happy. Because I want national cohesion that will make economic policies be stable over time. Development does not take place in 2 or 3 years. Just read David Landay's book, Development or Industrialization in the Western World.
Do you think then
And
it is...
by the way, the virtues of that book,
As you say that, then I must ask you, then is economic development then a prerequisite then for political stability as we look at it in this country, and based on the things that you've said now, and then now putting together with the BBI and the proposals that are being made, is it necessary for any country then that wants to move forward to achieve then this economic development before you then start to look at political stability?
No. It's not a linear process, by the way. It's not a linear process. First economic development, then the democracy. No. It doesn't happen like that. You only need to read the latest book by two Harvard professors, The Wealth and Poverty of Nations, why some are so poor and some are so rich. And you realize that it's not a linear process. They occur concurrently, by the way. One reinforces the other.
Prof, as we come to the conclusion of this, and you're talking about, taking advantage of what we have, developing and going forward, Kisumu went and bid and is set to host an Pan-African conference next year. This is the Afri-Cities Conference. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the Afri-Cities Conference, Afri-Cities, comes from the Union of African Local Government and Cities of Africa that was established about 20 years ago. Afri-Cities were held in Nairobi in 2006, and since then it has been held in various African capitals. This is now the 9th edition, as they call it, the one in Kisumu. In other words, it has been held 8 times before every 3 years, and this time we held one in Marrakesh 2018, I think. And now we are going to hold this one in Kisumu in November 2021. When we were in Marrakesh, the discussion was that, look, so far, Afri-Cities conferences have been held in major African cities, the capitals, Johannesburg, Nairobi, Cairo, and so on. This time, we should hold it in what I call intermediary cities, cities that are coming up, maybe about 1.5 million people, 2 million people, 3 million people, but cities which in the next 50 years will have 15 or 20 million people, like Lagos and all. These are the future metropolises, big metropolis in Africa. Let's have Afri-Cities this time in a city like that. Let's see what the problems of urbanization that face those cities. Let us make sure that these cities don't catch the Bombay flu. You know, the Bombay flu is when Bombay grew very big and then they realized they wanted subways and so on. It was very difficult to build the subways because people had built houses and shops everywhere. So it becomes very expensive. So if, let's say, infrastructure and transport is needed for the growth of cities, let us discuss in these intermediate cities and come with an understanding of how these cities can avoid some of the problems that big cities have in Africa today. That's why we're having these Afri-Cities in Kisumu in November 2021. And the theme is the future of African city, discussing various aspects of development of these future African cities like Kisumu. Now, if you come to Kisumu, you'll find that we are very busy trying to improve our infrastructure. We are very busy trying to attract investment in the hospitality industry because we shall need hotels, Airbnbs, and so on. So if you have some money, put it in Kisumu today so that you can reap the benefits of our cities. And we shall invite not only all our county governments, but we shall also invite traditional rulers like Nabongo Mumia and Cheke and so on, because those are forms of local government in cultural life in our society.
Asante Sana, thank you very much for speaking to us today. And as we wait for this report by the BBI task force to be handed over to the two principals and then it's then shared publicly, what would you like to see, or what would you like to tell people as they wait for this report?
I think me as it's bad English. I would say the following: that Kenyans should embrace this report and debate it. Let me repeat again: debate it agnostically. What do you mean by agnostically? Debate it without taking solid positions a priori beforehand, with an open mind, and see whether this report cannot be totally useless. By the way, I don't believe it that serious people like those put in the BBI team, like my friend Adam Solon, they can spend all that time meeting people and then come with a silly document. I don't think so. I mean, that would be a tragedy. So let us see what it proposes that is good. It may not be good totally, but let us come with reason why we reject certain parts of it. And let's see how we build our nation with some amount of national consensus as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Professor Nyong'o is the governor of Kisumu County, speaking to us about the BBI and also has told us about the Afro-Cities Conference that's going to be hosted in Kisumu City next year. Governor, we wish you a great day and thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for bringing me into this wonderful program. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation on KTN Home and on Spice FM. Time for us to take a break on KTN Home.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
When you listen to the conversation, for example, that we've just had with the governor of Kisumu County, I mean, he's participated in this process. He's participated in the process that brought us this new constitution. One thing is he's saying is, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at it. Let's remove all our political emotion from it. Is that really going to be possible?
At this point, when you already have polarized sections, there are people who are listening to certain politicians now who have listened to them over time and have already taken a side without debating the BBI agnostically. Without that, right? They've already taken sides. Your leader has said something and you've taken a side. Whether you've seen it, whether you've heard it, not. You just heard there's something called BBI and you've taken a side. At this point, to introduce that kind of debate without emotions attached is going to be a Herculean task. It's going to be very, very difficult.
And the unfortunate thing is that it must be led by someone. We really cannot tell the political leaders to shut up. Or should we? Just tell them, okay, the report is out for the next 2 months. Just keep quiet. Let's look at it.
Allow people to ingest Okay.
Now, people who will call themselves not politicians are the ones who are going to be commenting. And, of course, they'll be mouthpieces of these politicians.
You know, there's something that the good professor mentioned. And he said, you see, when you talk about the good and the bad of a document such as the BBI or a process, and you feel that it perhaps does not meet what you may think to be the standard it should, propose an alternative. You see, what we hear is an opposition to it. I don't hear a suggestion for something better.
No, there are also, to be fair, there are those that feel that there is really no issue to discuss right now.
And I think they are wrong, unless they live in a different country altogether.
You see, now that's where perspectives come in.
No.
If
Eric, this isn't
somebody sits here and they think, look, what is ailing us right now is the lack of implementation of the current constitution. All right? So the issue of telling us that we need to address the constitution is, first of all, implement the constitution. Let's get to a point where the constitution has been fully and thoroughly implemented. We've seen what is working, what's not working after implementation. And then let's have the conversation. There's that school of thought that is saying that is where the issue is.
You see, the constitutional issue, in my mind, sometimes is brought in to obfuscate, to sort of like color the actual discussion. The problems that we had before this new constitution came into being seem to be the same problems we still have.
Have now.
Yes.
Yep.
And those who are arguing that will argue that the implementation of this constitution in its full measure ought to solve these problems. But part of the constitution has been implemented. Now, if what has been implemented has indicated that there is perhaps need for change, so should we wait for the entire constitution to be implemented before you make the change?
Because the changes that are being proposed are for those parts that have not been fully implemented.
You see,
they have an impact and a bearing.
I don't think the constitution, even as I look at it as a layman, I cannot discuss the constitution piecemeal. I have to discuss it in its entirety. There's a reason why we have a new constitution, and there was something the new constitution was supposed to achieve. But there is a bigger problem. The constitution that we have has at the helm of it the presidential system that we currently have. Now, that presidential system is a problem. I don't think it's a debatable subject that this presidential system, as we have it, is a problem. It is a problem. Now, if what is being proposed to bring about changes to ensure that that problem is lessened, if I opposed it, then I would say what I would propose is this. But it seems the silent proposal seems to be
no.
or just maintain the status quo. But the status quo is what is bringing about this discussion.
You see, and the disagreement also stems from that fact that not everybody believes that the presidential system is a problem. You see, we start from those points. The fact that one side believes that this system is a problem doesn't mean that the other side ought to agree with this side that this system is a problem.
But Eric, it isn't one side. The whole idea of the handshake seemed to have brought two opposing sides together. So it wasn't as though one side just agreed to continue. Somebody had held a different position, and someone who had a completely different position from them seemed to have come together and agreed that, look, let's move forward in this way. So with that in mind, I think let the debate continue.
Indeed, let it continue. Coming up to, it's now 8 o'clock. We'll have a different conversation in the next hour. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu. Traffic.
Okay, coming out of Imaradaima this morning, quite a number of police on the streets this morning trying to direct that traffic. We know that the expressway, the construction there, is contributing to the traffic that we see on Mombasa Road this morning, and it's quite crazy. All the way from the Way Bridge, it has not let down in any way, shape or form, and it's heating up as we go along, guys. So if you're stuck there, just know that there is traffic up ahead, so you're going to be there for some time. If you didn't leave earlier than now, it means that there'll be some more minutes spent in this Monday morning traffic. Let's look at Thika Road, where it was slowing down right around Garden City. Getting into the CBD, however, it's picking up just a bit. As you get to the underpass at Pangani, you should be all right. Kiambu Road, however, is a mishmash, guys, as you're trying to join the superhighway. Then getting to the Globe Cinema overpass, you should be all right. If you use Forest Road, getting into the CBD, that also is an option. Again, the eastern and southern bypasses, an option for you to use longer, but you won't sit in traffic. All right, let us know where you might be stuck. We might be able to offer an alternative. Spice FM KE on Twitter, or text us on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation as we begin this new hour. C.T. Muga, remind us today's proverb.
If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito.
If you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. Utajua. You'll be knowing. All right, so let's shift the conversation now and look at the impact of COVID-19 on the economic status of the country. So a poll company called Trends and Insights for Africa, TIFA, released a report yesterday which is looking at personal income status, that's income, employment, and access to government assistance for various people around this time, especially after COVID-19. So TIFA Research released the report on the economic impact on COVID-19 amongst low-income earners in Nairobi. The highlights of the survey: employment status amongst Nairobi's low-income areas increased from 33% to 64% between April and September 2020. Although employment prospects were better, only 3% of the respondents who had been working before the COVID-19 arrived report now earning with all or most of what they had been earning before. 80% of all respondents say that their lives have become much worse since the arrival of the COVID-19 virus. 76% of the respondents indicate that they know someone who has been evicted for non-payment of rent. Now, if you just look at that and looking at what the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics had also released periodically over this period, it mirrors what is happening in the society.
Sure.
People have really been impacted by COVID-19. People have lost their livelihoods. People have now gotten to a point where they're unable to pay rent. They're unable to, even buy food for their families. People have no incomes at all. What does this mean?
Well, I mean, it definitely looks like you're staring down the barrel of a gun. Then, when it comes to what you're going to be able to do in the future to pick yourself up, right? And also at the same time, even beyond people not being able to pay their rent, we have even worse off situations whereby families have sent their children to go stay with their relatives in their rural homes, and then couples having to live in houses together. So you have 3 couples living in a home. And their children are not there so that they can share the rent. And these are things that are happening, not stories, not movies, things that are happening now as we speak. So I'm actually not surprised by these numbers that has come out of this research. It actually has been deemed the worst of times because of the introduction of COVID. One thing that seems very interesting to me, however, is that employment status amongst Nairobi's low-income areas increases, almost doubles, between April and September 2020, when things would have been the worst off, where companies were not hiring because they had essentially shut down. Within this low-income area, how then was it that people were getting more jobs? And I would like
Is it employment status or is it unemployment status, actually? It's moving from to 63%.
Employment status amongst low income increases from 30 to 64. So it would be interesting to know, does that mean that more people were employed, or the status changed whereby it went negative by half? I think we can get clarification on that.
Yeah.
Because it could be it could be either one of the two.
Yep.
It would seem that it would go in the negative way with all this other information that is following, because it now talks about the fact that 80% of those say that they've lived in the worst times. 76% say that they know someone who has been evicted for non-payment of rent. So it would appear that the employment status has shifted so that more people are unemployed.
Unemployment. It should be unemployment status. If you look at the figures themselves, how the main ways how daily life has changed by total: loss of employment or work, 47% change. Reduced earnings from self-employment or casual work, 42% change. Reduced earnings from formal employment, 23%. Increased hunger, 16%. Reduced real income due to inflation, 13%. So clearly it shows that this is unemployment that increased. So employment status worsened over the period.
Doubled.
In this time. Let's bring in the CEO and founder of TIFA. This is the Trends and Insights for Africa Research Limited, Maggie Reri. Maggie, thank you very much for joining us. Karibu to the Situation Room. Maggie's on the line. All right, so as we get Maggie on the line, we'll be able to speak to her shortly. So we want to understand exactly what this means, what the trends would therefore imply. If you look at this, they only conducted this research in the low-income areas of Nairobi. Of course, you can just look at that and see this would have an impact even in across the country, and this is what it basically would mean. Maggie, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry we lost you there for a bit. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much for having me. So early in the morning.
It's 8, Maggie. It is not so early in the morning.
So early is around midnight.
Yeah, 8 is better than the 6 o'clock. So yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. So let's just start off with seeking clarification on this. When you look at the figures that you released yesterday, do they imply that employment status worsened over this period between April and September, or is it the other way around?
Okay, so when we did this study in April, as the study shows, we had about 34% of people living in the low-income areas who do not have any income. Now, of course, the report says there's been an increase, but when you look at the data further, you actually see that the increase are amongst the people who are employed or are working part-time. But the people who are employed and working full-time, the number is 7%. The people who are employed but working part-time is 57%. So if you add the two, that's how you get the 64%. Meaning, although they're working part-time and they're not really earning what they should earn if they're working the full week or the full day.
So,
although the statistics show there's been an improvement in their pockets, not necessarily so. It just means that maybe over time they can begin to work more full-time.
Okay, so that means because of then, from what you found, that then because of the entrance of COVID, then people's employment was reduced. So they were working fewer hours and obviously earning less, and also some were not working at all.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about April. People were not working at all, and they were not working fewer hours. But now people are working more, but not necessarily many hours.
So what does that mean? That their income levels have improved? Because if somebody was not working at all and not even working few hours, and now they are working at least somewhat, then their income levels have improved.
Of course, their income levels have improved, but the question is, to what extent? If I was earning 0 and now I'm earning 1,000 bob, and my family expenditure is, let's say, 20,000, there's been an improvement, but I would not be able to feel it because the amount of money I'm earning is not enough to take care of my family. So I was actually telling people yesterday, we should not start celebrating that the employment levels have gone up. The question is, if you're employed, how much are you earning? And is whatever you're earning enough to allow you to meet your daily expenses? And the answer is no.
There's this little question of meeting daily expenses. Now, are we looking at it from what the daily expenses were before COVID? Are we looking at it from the point of view that maybe somebody has scaled it down because of COVID? What are we looking at?
Okay, so when we look at the research, we look at the areas that they feel that they need money for, or priority areas. And the sense is that even though they are earning money, they don't have enough money for food, they don't have enough money for rent. And now we have this complication that has come up where the kids have to go back to school. They don't have money then to, finance the going back to school. So we're not talking about meeting the expenses per se. It's meeting the expenses as they come along. And the priority right now is hunger, education, and paying rent, which they are not able to meet those expenses.
Okay.
Now, as we see it now, I mean, looking at those numbers, what should this information be used to decide on? I mean, it's clearly not just for you to know that people earned less, and I think that was known across the country. But what should this information or this data then fuel? What should it inform?
Let me talk about, let's start from a historical perspective. We're coming from a situation where the COVID restrictions put in place by the Ministry of Health was restricting movement, economic activity, people being able to get jobs, being able to open shops long enough. Some of these people who we see in our data are casual workers. They either work in the hotel industry, they work in the entertainment industry, and those institutions had been closed. With the easing of the restrictions, of course now there's some sort of return to work, and that is helping the low-income earners. Now, moving forward, what should it be informed? There's been a debate, and I was watching news last night, where the CS of Education was saying if Kenyans don't, if they continue to disregard the social distancing rules, then we're going to get to a position where the restrictions will come back. But now, if the restrictions come back, then it means that the low-income earners, and even a lot of Kenyans, will not be able to earn a living and will go back to where we are. So I would suggest that this data is looked at, we just ease the restrictions slightly, and already there's an improvement on the personal economic status of the respondents we're talking to. If only we could ease a bit more, of course, with responsibility, then we can see that their livelihoods will begin to improve.
What more is this that would classify as easing the restrictions more? I mean, looking at it practically, what more is required from the government?
Okay, that's a really, really, really big question. And what I would like to say is that what we're seeing in our data is that the low-income earners are appreciating the fact that there's this initiative called Kazi Mtaani, and they've got quite a number of young people working under that. So what that has done is provided an opportunity for them to earn a living. Whether that is a sustainable approach to ensuring people earn a living, that's debatable. Now, that's one. The second thing is that what the government a few months ago issued some sort of economic stimulus, and a lot of things were suggested. But the question is, have they trickled down to the ordinary Mwananchi? And the answer is no. So we have these big macro policies, things that you're saying we're going to help the ordinary Mwananchi business people be able to access or tap into funds. But the reality is that money takes a long time to trickle. So moving forward would be how to ensure that the money that is being given out by government or by the World Bank as aid to stimulate the economy is actually felt. I'm not an economist. I'll probably say that question should go to an economist in terms of how.
So again, looking at the figures that you've released, they're showing people who have said they are facing serious difficulty in meeting their daily needs. It is even including payment of rent and such. When you were talking to the people and asking them what exactly it means, how are you framing the question? Were you asking, are you able to pay rent now? Or are you asking, are you facing difficulty in paying rent, or have you paid rent?
Okay, so usually this is what you call a spontaneous response question. Spontaneous means that you don't want to prompt the respondent, because when you prompt, they could say, oh, yeah, that is happening to me. So what we do is that it's a spontaneous response. And we just generally ask people, since COVID-19 arrived into this country, how has your daily life changed? So we put the positive on one side and the negative on one side. To be honest, for this particular study, the way their daily lives have changed has been negative. And that's why you see mentions such as, I have lost employment, I've lost the earnings I used to earn, there's increased hunger, and so on. So this is spontaneous, mentioned as per the respondent's experience.
When you commission these studies, when you commission this research, I obviously want to believe that there is an agenda behind it, and not in a negative way. But what is the goal? What is the overall point or purpose of commissioning such a study? Why would you do this in COVID times? What were you seeking to achieve?
That's a very interesting question. So we don't do research for the sake of research. So what we're currently doing is that the first starting point, or the starting point when you do a research, is to create awareness. When you've created awareness about an issue, then there can be what you call debate and discussion. So by us releasing it to the media and all that, we've created awareness. And over time, we've seen that when we release this kind of report, we get into conversations with people who are decision makers at the policy level, and they begin to interrogate the data further and find out what they can do with the data. The data is also being used to evaluate some of the programs that have been put in place to see whether they're effective or not. We've had conversations with quite a number of people in government and in the NGO sector saying, you know what, we put this in place and we can see it's working. Let me give you an example. For instance, there's been efforts by one of the local organizations, even quite a number of local organizations, to feed the people living in the low-income areas. But what you're seeing in our data is that one organization is really standing out in terms of being mentioned by the respondents that they are actually helping a lot of people. That organization is SHOFCO. It's an NGO that is working in the slum areas. So what we are seeing is that a lot of organizations are then giving money through that organization, and this report is showing that they are being able to reach the low-income earners. Now, that's the immediate and short-term view. But in the long term, this data can then begin to say, you know what, if we ever to have such a crisis in Kenya again, what do? We know that the low-income earners will have the following challenges. What are the mechanisms that we can put in place to ensure that they are insulated from this kind of shocks? So it's evaluation. It is checking whether what organizations are doing is having an impact, and also beginning to plan for policy for the future.
Does something need to happen for such data collection then to be commissioned? Does something like COVID need to happen first? Does something like, a disaster, quote unquote, need to happen before something like this happens? Or is it regular information that can be collected, then can be used as informative data across the country, whether in public or private?
You see, if you look at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data, they do collect regular information about the general population, the low-income earners. That happens on a regular basis. But for this particular issue of COVID, it's unprecedented. Even if you had collected data, you'd not have imagined that it would have affected the country in this way. So what I can say is that there's already data collected, but what I appreciate is that when COVID broke out, quite a number of organizations decided, you know what, we're going to start collecting data now because we're collecting data on something that we've not seen. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has collected, an organization called TOEZA has collected, Ministry of Health continues to collect, and we are collecting. So what we have done, even as researchers, is that we are consolidating all our results and sharing them with the Ministry of Health and any other relevant parties, and they're beginning to get insights from it. So unfortunately, there was no way anyone would have predicted and planned for this kind of situation. However, sorry, if I may add, we could borrow from West Africa. If you remember in 2016, if I'm not wrong, or 2014, we had Ebola in West Africa. And Ebola, although its effect was not as, in terms of deaths and infection, was not as big as it has been for COVID, Ebola actually presents an opportunity for us to learn. So for me, I felt that perhaps when COVID hit or there was a threat of COVID, we should have actually gone to see what happened in West Africa. How did they manage Ebola? How did they manage Ebola with the education system? Therefore, you're using a case study that has happened elsewhere rather than us beginning to learn afresh.
Is there a specific reason why it is this study only took place among the low-income earners within the urban centers and not low-income earners in the rural areas?
Okay, so if you look at the statistics in terms of the COVID cases, the highest number is actually in Nairobi. And also what happened, if you remember, Nairobi was cordoned off and were not able to move. So we felt that because Nairobi was hit the highest, we then decided to focus on Nairobi and also focus on the population that is most affected, and that's the low-income earners. Now, that does not mean that there's no room for doing this in the rural areas. And the organizations that have done that, like TOEZA East Africa, but what you find is that the people living in Nairobi, and I'd like to add Mombasa if possible, the effect is actually worse than low-income earners in the rural areas. And here we're talking about they're living in areas that are congested. They're living in areas where, even if they've got no place to farm, I mean, if I'm living in the rural area, I probably have a small place where I can farm and probably plant a few stomachs and make some money or get some food. But in Nairobi, you're talking about living in a very small room. You cannot do farming. The only way you can make money is casual work. You don't have casual work. Then worst case scenario is that you've actually been, that was what was happening. Nairobi has been cordoned off. You cannot leave Nairobi. So we felt that Nairobi was an ideal place, but that does not mean that there's no opportunity to do this kind of study in other parts of the country.
Was the study able to detect some of the impact of government measures and other support that has been offered by various other organizations? So, for instance, if you look at all these areas and everybody is reporting that their life has been impacted heavily, at some point, were you able to detect that were it not for assistance coming from the government, Kazi Mtaani, or the cash transfer program by the government, or even the COVID-19 response fund, whatever it did in some of these areas, were you able to detect the impact of such money going into these areas?
Okay, so if you look at our data, we asked people whether they've received any assistance, and we're finding that about 17% have received cash, 15% have received relief food, 20% received masks. So if you look at those numbers, they're quite low. I mean, 17%, 15, and 20, that is really low. It doesn't begin to cover the population that is affected. And again, if we actually found that in terms of the organizations that are really, really active were actually the NGO sector and the private sector. They're the ones who appear to be doing much more in terms of giving cash, masks, and donations. Now, the government, of course, is doing something, and their rating is, can I say, average, but at the end of the day, not enough has been done in terms of assistance to help this needy population.
Time for us to take a break, Maggie, and when we come back, we'll look at also the impact of COVID-19 on parents now that schools are reopening and what they the respondents were saying in that other survey that you also released results of yesterday. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're having a conversation with Maggie Ireri. She's the founder and CEO of Tifa Research Limited. And it's 24 minutes after 8. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back on KTN Home, on Spice FM and online.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Spice FM. Nyeri.
All right, mostly cloudy conditions still in Nairobi, highs of 24 and lows of 16. That warning for rain coming in later though. Nyeri cloudy at 16 degrees. The rain seemed to have stopped for now, but they will come back later. Highs of 22 and lows of 15 in Nyeri. In Nakuru, it's mostly cloudy at 16, highs of 21 with thunderstorms expected later, coming down to a low of 13. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 14 degrees with highs of 19 and lows of 13. There will be thunderstorms this afternoon. It'll be rainy in Kisumu this afternoon, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Mostly cloudy at the moment at 22. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kakamega at 19 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 16, also with a chance of rain here. It's partly cloudy in Mombasa, and those clouds, the heavy ones for rain, seem to have disappeared. Highs of 30 and lows of 24. Sunny conditions in Malindi at 27, going to highs of 30 and lows of 25. It'll be sunny all day. Partly cloudy in Kampala at 19, highs of 25 and lows of 19 with rain expected later. It's going to be a partly cloudy day in Dar es Salaam at 27, highs of 31 and lows of 23. Joburg is mostly sunny and warming up at 20 at the moment, highs of 31 and lows of 18. And finally for now in Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 31. That'll be the high with lows of 24.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay, guys, it's thick jam on the Thika Road this morning. Use Juja Road if you're going to town. That's an alternative that's been offered up. The route is smooth all the way till Ngara. So if you're going to stick on the highway, you're going to be there for some time. All right, the underpass is also providing some drama this morning, and that's at the Pangani underpass. That's at the underpass, or rather the overpass at the Globe Cinema. So be careful there. Serious accident at Donholm this morning, unfortunately fatal for one person. So if you're approaching that area, please be careful, guys. It's looking like a crazy Monday, manic in some cases. On Mombasa Road, as you're getting into the CBD, you're going to get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, and you're going to be stuck on Uhuru Highway for some time as you approach the CBD, and then go towards Westlands. So this is what we're seeing this morning. It's crazy all the way from Lolongo on Mombasa Road, Thika Road, and we are seeing some traffic on Langata Road as well. Spice FM KE, that's how to get to us on Twitter, or text us on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
After 8, the conversation continues right here on Spice FM in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, and worldwide on spicefm.co.ke. We're also live for the next half hour on KTN Home as well. Joining us on the line this morning is Maggie Ireri, founder and CEO of Tifa Research. We're looking at results that were released yesterday after some survey that was conducted by the organization. Some of the questions coming in, Ndu.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, Maggie, as we even go towards the education now and look at the research that was done concerning that and what we've talked about previously, all of this seems to definitely rallying around COVID-19. However, looking at education, we've had a conversation in this room and we thought that, as schools open, the two big fears for parents were that, number one, they didn't want their children to contract COVID as they sent them back. But it seemed like the economic issue was a bigger one, that parents just didn't have money to send their children back to school for paying school fees. But with this research that has been done and what you've seen is that 70% of households in Nairobi's low-income areas fear that their children would contract the coronavirus in school. Now, is this a reason then for not sending them back to school, or is it a fear that they then sit with?
Okay, so if you look at the current situation, parents are being asked to send their kids back to school without very clear measures about how their kids will be protected. Now, if you were to go to the low-income areas and you look at the sizes of the classrooms, I've been to one of the schools and you find there are 72 children, 80 children in one class. And they're sitting so close to each other. And the question is there any social distance? Is it possible to actually contain the spread of the virus should there be an outbreak in the school? And the issue here is not necessarily economic. The issue here is health. If my child goes to school and they get the virus, they could bring it to our household. I live in a low-income area, and you know how the low-income areas are. Houses are next to each other. In fact, the level of interaction is really high. Now, if I get sick and my family gets sick, who's going to pay for the bills? And we've seen the kind of expenses that the COVID treatment is taking. So it begins with a fear of the disease, but eventually the implication is actually personal economic status. Who will pay for this? And if I am not able to work or I have to be at home for 14 days, how will I be able to earn a living? And the question is no. I'm a casual worker. I'm not report to work for 14 days. Who will then pay for the bills in this house? So that's what we are seeing as a resistance to the schools reopening and the kids going back to school.
When you see that 70% of the households in these low-income areas in Nairobi with school-age children fear that their children would contract the virus when they return to school, how was this question framed?
Okay, so basically, we asked, I'm just trying to get the question 1 minute so I can read it for you. So the question is, when your child goes back to school, are you worried that they may get infected by the virus? And the question was a yes-no response. And also, just to add, in addition to asking about the child, we also asked about the parent and say, generally speaking, are you worried about contracting the virus? And you can see that there's a higher concern for their children getting the virus, which is 70%, than personal. Personal meaning me as a parent, which is about 44%. So I feel that they feel that the school environment poses a greater threat to their children.
Was there space, for example, for asking that same question without including the words goes back to school? What I'm asking is it possible that they have the same fear whether the child is going to school or not? Because if you ask me, even if you ask me today, when your child goes back to school, do you fear that they could contract coronavirus? And is yes or no? Of course, I'm going to say yes. I don't see how many parents would really say, no, I have no fear. There has to be something else that would drive somebody to say, I have no fear. So is it about the school environment that is increasing the fear, or is it just the question is, do you fear that your child could get COVID-19?
I believe that is definitely the school environment, because right now, when we've been asking this question about whether we've been asking the question about whether there's a risk, whether you're personally concerned about getting the virus, you as a parent, the numbers have been going down. Because over time, people are, and this has happened across the country, people are feeling that maybe this virus thing is more serious. So that's the parents themselves. But now there's something that is going to change in the next couple of weeks. The environment will change, whereby the child will be in and out of the environment. So we feel that the question was justified, especially since that has been a big debate amongst parents, amongst the schools. And definitely the question is not biased, if that's what you're trying to imply.
Did you have a follow-up question in terms of a why, or was it just left at the yes or no?
No, we did not have a follow-up question for this survey. However, we've done other small studies with parents over the last couple of months before even the schools were announced to open. And we consistently, when we ask parents, what worries you most about the schools reopening, we get over 60% saying, you know what, my child could be infected. And when we ask why, they say, how sure are you that there are measures put in place to protect our children? And I just want again to borrow from West Africa. When the schools reopened after Ebola, there was a whole conversation about safety measures. You had very clear indication that all the schools were inspected to ensure that they had the COVID measures, like somewhere to where they could clean their hands, enough toilets, especially in the rural areas. Over and above that, they did training for the teachers. There was evidence that the teachers had been trained to deal with the COVID measures and ensuring that if there's something to happen to the school, the child will be taken care of. The Ministry of Education, together with other stakeholders, including the health system, actually published guidelines. There was a whole booklet on how this thing should be managed at the school. Now, here we are asking our parents to send their children back to school. But what are the symbols or assurances that measures are being put in place to protect children? For me, I would say not enough has been done, and that's why we're getting these kind of numbers where 70% are worried about the children going back to school.
Now, you mentioned that, well, you haven't mentioned, but the question was asked if there was a follow-up question to what you asked. But even now, children have gone back to school. In your opinion, and looking at the data that you have, do you really think that the issue of children contracting virus, or the possibility, and then coming to infect their parents, was the foremost reason that parents were apprehensive about children going back to school?
So in my personal opinion,
Yes.
I'll say yes. And they say our survey captures perceptions. Now, perceptions may not be reality, but if I perceive something, then I act based on my perception. So I would say yes.
How long before the schools reopening was this question asked?
Okay, so if you look at, we did this study in September, 24th September to 2nd of October, which was just basically less than 20 days ago. So it was quite recent.
So it was actually at the height of the conversation that schools are going to reopen and schools are going to reopen soon.
Yes.
Is it also possible that what would also inform this perception is, how am I going to put this? The fact that it's an environment that you as a parent have no control of. So that whole inherent fear of, as a parent, I'm sending my child to an environment that I have no control of. When they're at home, I have absolute control of it. And therefore, I have less fear because I know they're playing with mtoto wa so and so and mtoto wa so and so, and they're playing out there. Because the fact of the matter is that these children are not locked up. They are playing within these neighborhoods. Could that be one of the reasons that would also influence this perception?
Yeah, I agree with you. That is one of the reasons. And also, we're living in a global economy. We are following news about what is happening in other countries. There have been situations where schools have been opened and the virus surge increases. So definitely information from other countries, lack of control of your current environment is a big concern. I have even interacted with parents who, I think for the last 4 to 6 months, have sanitized the kind of environment their children live in, who they socialize with, where they play, and all that. Then suddenly, they have to let go. They have to let go and say, you know what, I'm dropping my child to school and let them be. I've also spoken to parents who have said in the last 6 months during COVID, their child has not gotten a flu. And because of when you go to school, kids play with each other. One person could be sick, another is not sick, and they get a flu or an etc. Here is a situation where you're allowing your child to go to school and you don't know how the other child has been managed or other children. So it is an inherent reason to fear the possibility of children going back to school. Now, the question is, in spite of their fear, will they take their kids back to school? And I'd like to say, I think they will, because they don't want their kids sitting at home and they lose out on the curriculum that is being covered and eventually not do very well in the exams. So it's a fear, but I believe that quite a number of people will send their kids back to school, but there will definitely be a percentage, that maybe a small one, that will not.
That will not send the bill. So now if you're looking, just going beyond this, and if you want to analyze it just a little bit more, and you say that, okay, there are those who do it, but do it with a fear. Again, looking at how then this fuels decisions that then are made at the top tier of leadership, government, now to say, all right, this is what parents feel. Do you find it then necessary for that particular stakeholders' information to then be included in the decisions that are being made from what you found out?
So let's talk about the school reopening. My understanding is that there was a lot of consultative process that went through. There was a committee that was put in place. It had representatives from private schools, secondary schools, primary schools, and they had a whole conversation and there was a discussion. So I'm sure there was a consultative process. Regardless of the consultative process, we are saying, we parents, or the parents are saying, I know Ministry of Education and all the people who are sitting in that committee, you have the best interest at heart for our children and the education sector. But bottom line is, we are concerned. Now, for me, what I would say is that if only the schools can be reopened, but factor in the sentiments of the parents. And the sentiments of the parents is safety and assurance of safety. And that's it. And remember, if I was to move to another sector, by the time the restaurants opened, there were all measures that were put in place to ensure that they could reopen in a safe way. And the restaurants went out of their way to communicate what they've done, and eventually we've seen people going back in. So the question is, for the schools, exactly what has been done. And it cannot be a blanket assessment. Primary school X, Y, Z. Is there a checklist? Has those checklists been, everything been addressed? Is there where the parents can come in, because we also have parents association, they come into the school and see, you know what, my child is coming back to this school, but the school administration is assuring us they have actually aligned with the protocols from the Ministry of Education, and here is evidence of them doing that.
It might seem like a dumb
I
question,
doubt that is
Maggie.
happening.
Sure, it might seem like a dumb question then, but why is it necessary to go into the details then when it comes to schools to get this information in terms of readiness and preparedness for children to go back? Why is it necessary?
But I think it's quite obvious. This is safety of children. For me, I've had conversations with parents, and when you talk about children, the conversation is very, very sensitive. So if for Kenyans to go back to restaurants, if for Kenyans to go back to public places, there was a very thorough process. We are talking about our children. In fact, a higher standard has to be put in place because we're talking about children. And for me, whether it sounds logical or not, it is emotional, because when you're talking about our children, it's an emotional conversation.
Right.
And regardless of whether it's emotional or not, it is the parent's right to be assured that the child is going back to school in a safe environment.
You did mention one of the things that I saw in the findings of your research had to do with domestic violence.
Yes.
Yes. Now, what made you think about inquiring into this? What was the thinking behind it?
So to be honest, when we started this study, we assumed that the main impact would actually be more of personal finances and a health issue. But increasingly, and thanks to the media, we were seeing reports of domestic violence, and we then decided to put this question into the survey. And then we said, domestic violence can be against men, it can be against women, or against children. So you'll see in our results to structure it in such a way that we're asking about the incidence of domestic violence, whether it exists in the neighborhood. Please note, we ask whether it exists in the neighborhood. Usually in research, if we ask, does domestic violence exist in your home? We are likely to get the wrong answers because people don't want to admit. But when you ask, is it happening in your neighborhood, meaning somebody around your neighborhood, and we find that the instances are quite worrying because we have 37% reporting violence against women, 29% reporting violence against men, and 22% saying there's violence against children in the neighborhood. And the violence could be physical, verbal, or both.
Yeah, just looking at those figures again, actually, for the benefit of our audience, from this survey, the violence against children, 28% was physical abuse, 21% is verbal abuse, and 46% is both physical and verbal. And then looking at the violence against women, 25% of physical abuse, 20% of verbal abuse, and 52% both physical and verbal. For men, 26% physical, 30% verbal, 39% both physical and verbal. This is, like you said, these are worrying trends. And this is a very high number. If you actually look at the kind of increase that you're talking about in a period of between April and September, is it?
Yes.
So between a period of April and September, if we even talk about 37% increase in violence against women, or 29% increase in violence against men, and 22% increase in violence against children, what is it that would lead to this kind of increase?
So our population is living in the low-income residence. If you have been to any of these areas, it's a pretty small house. And if there's going to be, and remember we started with curfew being from 7 p.m. So by 7 p.m., people had to be in the house, locked in, and in this small house. Whereas in the past, maybe the man goes out and comes back late in the evening, or you can sit outside and you can visit each other. And by the time you're coming home, you're just coming to sleep. But now when you're in a small room and you have to be together and there's no space, then I think the tensions begin to show. And it's only a matter of time that you start seeing this kind of results. And to be honest, this is not something that is only happening in Kenya. It's also happening globally. We've seen cases of this happening in countries like India, South Africa, and the rest. So the issue of being together rather than avoiding people that you cannot stand and you're then together in the house is an issue. The other one I'd like to add is that if you're a man and you've lost your job because of COVID, suddenly you have a family that is asking you for food, your children are pestering you for things and you don't have money. How do you express your frustration? Perhaps that ends up being put towards against the women and the children in the house, which is really, really sad.
But also even looking at the figures, I mean, there was a significant increase in violence against men, 29% increase in violence against men. And if you look at both women, 37% increase, and men, 29%, I don't know how to word this, but it appears that the adults are fighting amongst themselves more than they're even meting out this violence against children, which is still high. I'm not saying there is a low number, but it's 22%. But the men and women is much higher. How would you translate that result?
So, if you look at this data, actually the physical abuse against women is 25%, and the one against men is 26%, which is at par.
Yep.
Verbal abuse against women is 20%, against men is 30%. So what we start beginning to see that for the men, because verbal abuse is 30%, it speaks to a situation where maybe the members of the household and maybe perhaps the women and their wives begin to abuse the husband for whatever reason. But for us, our assumption was that perhaps it's a socioeconomic issue.
Yeah.
This person is not bringing enough money home,
Right.
and therefore I need to abuse him or express myself, and in that expression it ends up being verbal abuse. Now, if you look at the combination of both physical and verbal abuse, which is 52% for women, versus men, 39% physical and verbal abuse, we still find that women suffer a higher percentage of domestic violence for both as compared to men. But for us, what was interesting is that a lot of stereotypes always say that domestic violence is always against against women and against children. But this study is beginning to redefine what is happening on the ground. The other reason could be where men end up getting physical abuse is that maybe they go out drinking. By the time they're coming back home, they're probably drunk and don't have enough stamina, and they are basically vulnerable to being beaten. So these are very, very worrying statistics. And the worst thing would be the physical abuse getting to the next level, which is permanent damage or even killing each other because you're in the house together.
But your study didn't look into these details. These are just suppositions that you're putting forward.
Yes, these are suppositions.
I mean, I'm going back to a few months ago, even before COVID, we saw the calls that had come for, the mental state of the country to be looked into and to provide more psychosocial support from the government across board. And then we see COVID, and then we see things like this. Again, a place where information then should be able to fuel actions that, government would be able to then take. And I really want to push on that, to ask that, how far do you push, or how far might you consider pushing when it comes to using this information to really help the country as a whole? I can understand the commercial aspect and how important that is. At the same time, partnering even with governments and partnering with other groups to say, look, we are able to get this information, and you cannot go ahead and start projects, for example. You can't go ahead and, implement policy if you don't have the information. How far would you go to make sure? Because we've talked about so many things now. We've talked about economic status of people, which affects the mind. We've talked about education and the decisions parents are making. We've looked at, physical, sexual violence, abuse against men and women taking place as a result of COVID. Things that could actually help towards policy. How vested then would you be, even with other groups, to make sure that this information is used as much as it can be?
So if you look at the organizations funding this survey, which is the Canadian High Commission in Kenya and the Hans Sedol Foundation in Kenya, for them, I would like to say the starting point was to avail this data, especially to their network. And what you know about their kind of network, they have a lot of organizations that are dealing with these particular issues. So the starting point is that they are already circulating this report and engaging possible people who could actually take these results moving forward. Now, the other bigger conversation is, how do you use this data to inform policy? I don't want to paint a very negative picture, but policy formulation takes time. I have been involved in the policy process, and from the time you have information to stakeholder engagement to coming up with a policy, it could actually take 2 years. So it is a long journey, but it's a starting point to informing, this data informing some of those initiatives. We are aware that this information has been used by certain organizations to reactivate helplines dealing with domestic violence. What we were informed, I'll not naming the organization, is that they had centers within the low-income areas where people would come and complain and about domestic violence in their homes. However, when COVID broke and those movement restrictions, then they found that they had less people going to the centers. Now, this data was quite interesting to them because they're able to see, in spite of the numbers or the human traffic to their center reducing, it's still there. And they actually began to publicize the helpline and begin to tell people, you can actually call, we can call you back, and so on. So that was an immediate reaction. But in terms of policy, it does take time. And somebody needs to own the data, come up with policy proposals, and then move it to the next level.
Are these conversations being had? Even if to hear that it's available for people to then consider, time that it would take notwithstanding, are these conversations being had?
Yes, they are, because one of our mandates is to ensure this report is distributed as widely as possible. We've been having what you call webinars, picking topics and saying, this is a topic, and getting subject matter experts, and getting quite a number of organizations to attend. I remember the last webinar we had a couple of months ago. The profile of the organizations that actually were part of the webinar were quite significant because they have programs in some of these areas. Now, it is our hope that they are now moving the findings to the next level. But definitely, the findings are being processed and being moved forward. I'm also aware of an initiative between Taweza and Makeni County, where they did a study on COVID. And by the way, when they're doing the study on COVID, they agreed on the questionnaire with the county government, and the data was collected, and the recommendations were discussed with the county government of Makueni, and now the county government of Makueni is implementing. Now, what that means is that there's a proactive county government. The county government is actually inputting on the design of the questionnaire and then using the findings for implementation. I wish we could get a bit more those kind of organizations that actually move forward and engage researchers more proactively, like the Makueni County government is doing.
You know, Makueni is mentioned all the time in many of these forums. Should we all just move into Makueni or just make Kenya Makueni? Anyway, thank you very much, Maggie Irari, for speaking to us and for sharing the insights into these reports that you've released. Maggie is the founder and CEO of TIFA. Asante sana and have a good day, Maggie.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Kwaheri.
Thank you.
Kwaheri. We also want to say kwaheri to our audience on KTN Home, who will be joining us again tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on KTN Home. But this conversation happens every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. The Situation Room on Spice FM, 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
I mean, wouldn't it be very good if policymakers used all this information then to inform what they are creating? I mean, yes, of course, policy formulation will take time, but data is also being collected on a regular basis. KNBS is collecting a lot of data. They can use that and see these are the trends. So create a policy that then addresses the trends, either rides the trend or stops the trend.
For sure. I mean, just off the top of my head, I think about what, again, the CS for Education was complaining about months before. And he said, you know what? We have so many universities offering the same courses over and over again in across counties in the country. Why can't we merge? And then I think to myself, there are organizations who have collected this research, who've collated this data, who know for a fact that these are the courses that would invite job employment in the future. These are the courses that would be good for entrepreneurship and business in the future. Why not then work alongside those? That's just the education sector arm of government that could use this information. So, I mean, I do think that partnerships are very important. Partnerships for development, I think, work. And if you have these arms who are doing this research, why then is the research not being used? Encouraging more and more organizations to use this, I think, is absolutely important.
But remember, the government understands this, and that's why there's an entire department called the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, which has a clear mandate to collect all this data, collect a household income survey, do all this, and put it all together so that informs policy, that informs law, that informs taxation and budget making process going forward. This is an important arm of government. Probably the question would be then, even as we look at, for example, TIFA coming up with a report that's going to be used by a certain organization, are those organizations also looking at other research?
Exactly.
Would the TIFA research, for example, be in line with the KNBS data? And if they are, then whichever organization is then using this information is using actual information, information that is correlating with other information that has been gathered by other organizations. It's an important aspect of how best to consume this data. Questions always emerge, and we've been asked before, why are you collecting this data?
You know, this data is important, but one of the things that I find would have assisted us in consuming this data perhaps more wholesomely is if follow-up questions surrounding these very questions that have been asked were asked. Yes, it is important for you to actually understand the perception that people have, but it's equally important to understand why they have those perceptions. And it's also equally important to understand that when you ask a question, someone will tell you what they think is most acceptable to you. But it's
It may
upon
not be their truth.
No, not necessarily. But it's upon probing or asking, that's a secondary question, that you actually get to understand the thinking behind it. Yes. The reason why I'm saying this is because, yes, it is true that COVID has been a concern to parents. But the financial implications of students going back to school is a huge consideration for many parents.
Yeah.
Yes. Perhaps even huger in many cases than even the possibility of the child getting sick. Yes. Because if someone doesn't have the money or is having challenges, it's real.
Yeah. And if you ask upon further probing you, then you'll be able to tell what is it that was informing that answer that you gave me in the first place.
Exactly.
Was that answer because of fear of COVID, or were you just saying that thinking that if I say yes, then schools will not be reopened? But the actual reason may not really come out.
True.
Maybe it's when this kind of research is conducted for programmatic purposes, if you're conducting a research just to establish how then would the family be ready to reopen, to send their children back to school so that it can inform us on whether to reopen schools or kind of assistance, then you'd find question 1A, 1B, 1C being implemented.
Yes.
But if you're just collecting information just for like a spot check of what's happening, you may find it's just the question 1.
Actually, you then get the impression this is more like a survey. Okay, because probably the information from the survey now would lead you to have now a second process where some of these details may be sought.
Will come out.
Yes.
For sure.
This conversation continues on Spice FM. Good morning, it's now 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so Ngong
Traffic.
Matatus are seeming to be a menace this morning and driving traffic down Gong Road. Unfortunately, that's not happening, and it's moving very, very slowly as you're trying to approach the city mortuary roundabout. Heading then towards Valley Road or down the Great Ngong Road should be then okay thereafter. It's still a bumper-to-bumper situation on Mombasa Road, not looking so good, not looking too slow either. So you should be able to get off of that one soon enough. Thika Road also, where it was a bumper-to-bumper situation right around the underpass at Pangani, that has opened up some. So we should be getting out of traffic hours soon enough. Westlands, Wayaki Way, still looking like a mess a little bit right around Muthiga, but as then you get out of that, you should be okay. So we'll be out of traffic hours soon. It's been a bit crazy this Monday. You get stuck somewhere else further down, let us know. Spice of MKE on Twitter or text us on 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
9. The conversation continues. Macadero Mike is asking, what was today's proverb? There was this other one about a mosquito, if I'm not wrong. I didn't get it clearly.
Maybe I should repeat it. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. That's the mosquito one.
That's the other one about the mosquito. Umesikia, Mike Macadero. So repeat again.
If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito.
Right. There you go. Try spending a night with a mosquito. Well, we'll get to understand the context of this in today's proverb. As we continue with this conversation, we had this conversation with Professor Nyong'o, the governor of Kisumu County, whether BBI is the cure. A number of comments have come in. David Peter Mutendeweso says, no, we don't know what's in BBI. Secondly, the way it's being processed to be passed shows how dictatorial its organs are. how dictatorial its organs are. And others have just said, City, when you talked about, two came together, it was two people who came together, not two sides. That's according to Julia Kagitugu, who says, you're right, if the constitution is fully implemented, then maybe those issues being advocated for amendment will dissolve. Some of the questions that are coming in. To answer my question, that is me, Eric, Gamaliel Namalel says, to answer your question, Eric, has the public been consulted? The answer is yes. We saw the team visit all the counties.
So that's consultation. You saw the team, so you've been consulted.
Well,
it shows that it was open.
It was open, and people were told in advance where they were going. And people were invited and said they could go there and actually put forth their opinions as to whether everybody who went there managed to have their opinion heard. But those who didn't have their opinion heard presented their memorandums. And there were many, there was more than one way of actually contributing to the discussion.
Right.
Yes.
Or whether that was a sanitation move to then bring in what has already been predetermined in a boardroom is another one that we'll see when the report comes out. Anyway, this report that we're saying, a report was launched and we already know the contents of that report. It wasn't widely shared in the public. It was just published in a couple of areas here and there. It's contained in the BBI website. We saw it. But in terms of then, is BBI the cure? We need to ask.
Well, ask yourself, maybe I even brought a question.
What's the diagnosis first?
What's the ailment?
Yes, and I think the ailment is understood because the ailment it didn't begin and start with the BBI. It began and started with the need to change the constitution because it was felt that all the wrongs that we've been complaining about since independence might actually, we may actually start on the path of sorting these things out if we had a new constitution. We got a new constitution. And those who participated in getting that constitution will admit even today that even what we had was probably not what everyone thought should be there. But people compromised and they said, okay, folks, let's move forward. The other matters can be looked at later. But for now, let's go with what we have. So why am I saying this? That even with the new constitution, it doesn't guarantee that all the problems you had will be resolved. And by the same token, it doesn't guarantee that the BBI will resolve all the questions and all the issues that we have. What these documents do and what these processes do is they move us forward. Certain steps are taken forward. Certain steps are taken forward.
So
that
it
is my
contains
opinion.
some. It could have very many bad things, but there'll be something positive that will move forward.
Yes, there's always something that pushes you forward.
Is that a worthy price to pay?
This, I think, is a question that is worthy of debate. Because there are those who might even have argued that we did not need a new constitution.
In the first place.
As if it's a question of debate.
And that's why we keep bringing up this issue. When they talk about BBI and the way forward is led by politicians, then it's because these are political leaders. They understand, they have lived and engaged with the people. They then hear what the people are saying. And then they have this ability to look at things from a bird's eye view. They can also see this is what is happening. This is what is expected of a leader. So when you come up with a solution and say, I think what is ailing us, there's something that is really making us get to this cycle where we are always polarized, where every election is a do or die. Everything that is happening, every little conversation that we have appears like it's a teeth-pulling exercise, like you keep saying. We need a solution. And probably the solution would be, how do we bring ourselves together to a table and address this particular? How do we confront what the problem is? That by itself is very good. And then it goes into the other side where then that good idea is hijacked by political players. Somebody sees there's an opportunity for me to then use this particular vehicle to make things work for me. And then the other somebody else feels it was a good opportunity. It's actually going to be of great benefit to this person. And therefore I'm going to fight it because I wish it was I who was on the driving seat of that. Now that I'm not the one, that this guy is going to end up with with great benefit, and I'm going to oppose it. So the conversation then stops being what ails us, how do we seek solutions, to it becomes a contest between these two people who are fighting to be at the driving seat of this particular conversation.
Which is what it appears to be at the moment.
Yep.
And that's why I was saying you would find that some people on the opposing side may have actually gone through the document and realized, hold on a second, there's actually maybe nothing really wrong with this thing. Or there are actually things that we could implement in this country. But by virtue of the fact that they're already on this polarized side, they're not going to go away from it. They're going to stick on that side. And then there are those on the other side who believe that maybe there's some things here that I don't necessarily agree with. But because I have stood on the side of the proponent of this initiative, I'm going to stay here regardless. And I think that is the problem of not having gone through it, or not having looked at it from a non-biased eye, which many would say in politics it's almost impossible to do without being unbiased. But in this case, for something that would affect the country in the manner in which it is, I think it would have been prudent for everybody to look at it without taking sides. But they've taken sides first and then are looking at it, which is now, unfortunately, the danger.
Is there any clause, does any of you know if there's any clause in our constitution that speaks to amending the constitution should the implementation of it prove that it doesn't actually meet the intended purpose?
Well, it doesn't say when you should amend. It just says you can amend.
If you want to amend,
at
then
any
people
point
should
you
go
can
to
amend
referendum.
this constitution.
Yes.
And then there are those clauses that you can go to a referendum. There are those that you just go through amending.
Okay.
Amendment bill in Parliament.
Now, you see, that is what the Constitution says. Now, if you listen to this discussion that we've had, there are those who say you shouldn't amend, and yet the Constitution allows you to bring up that topic.
That's the letter of the Constitution. The spirit, however, is that you don't just wake up and amend.
Without having
entrenched we've been
many
told
of
many
the tenets
times,
that you came up with.
as soon as this Constitution was promulgated, there are those that sat up and came with 125 amendments. You know, this constitution, but we need to amend this. And those have been branded those that are the enemies of the 2010 constitution. Okay? There are those that are said they were opposed to the constitution, but they looked at the political wave and they saw, well, let's just ride this wave.
See where
when
it takes us.
it passes, we shall begin amendment. Because they felt that this constitution is not, what's the term?
Well, it doesn't perhaps deliver what it is that they hoped or
Yes.
what they would think a document such as that one should deliver.
It doesn't serve their purpose.
Yes. But you see, Eric, this really is what political debate is all about. It's always there, and these are the things that you expect in a democracy if you want to claim that the system that you have is a democratic one. This will always happen. Now, what is not in doubt is that there was need for change. And remember, the process that led to the Constitution wasn't just a politically led process. No. One could argue that any grouping that represents this particular country contributed to it, whether it was religious leaders, whether it was a civil society, whether they were part and parcel of this change process.
Yep.
Now, yet with that, there were still people who opposed it.
Right.
There will always be people who oppose something. It does not really matter. It doesn't matter. There will always be people who oppose it. So this isn't a question of whether it's right or wrong. With our politics, if we were to look at it realistically, you will find that given what is at stake at any given point in time, politicians will take certain positions. And give those politicians enough time, if they're still alive,
they will change.
If it suits the purpose at a particular point in time, they will change.
Yes.
And they'll have a totally different position on it. Now, one could argue that experientially they've realized that the position they had before doesn't perhaps achieve what they keep saying this one ought to achieve.
Can you then use that and say that if a politician can change their mind, then you can do so also with a document which is essentially is supposed to guide the way a nation operates, right? And then you had people, experts from across the country who came, a bit from around the world came, gave their views, everybody put it down, and then within no time, you want to come and change it. By virtue of the fact that politicians can change their minds along some way down the river, you should then also be able to change this guiding document whenever then you see fit.
Remember, this is now political discourse, huh? And unfortunately, we judge our political discourse by politicians, by whom we believe politicians to be. And in this country, they're not considered to be the most reliable or honest people that you can come across.
Unfortunately.
That's the general view that is held. So anything that has to do with them is not taken with a pinch of salt. It's a dollop. It's almost a whole sack of salt. Okay? So they could even have a point that is valid. But because of the way we perceive our politicians,
you're just hearing one thing coming out of them.
As the good professor said, we then throw the baby with the bathwater.
But there's history as well that's informing this. The first constitution was amended many times. And many of those times, people will argue that it was not because this is what the country needed. It is because this is what the politicians needed at the time.
Yes.
So just when now we talk about, amending the constitution, there's that fear that comes to mind.
Yes.
Why is it that we felt that we needed to rewrite this whole constitution? It's because we felt that the Lancaster document that came in and that we started and got into independence with was mutilated in Parliament by politicians. For any reason? No, not for the reason of wanting to advance our democracy, not because they really were looking at making Kenya Singapore. No, it's because they wanted to meet their own nefarious
agenda. Wow.
Let's take a break and then we'll ask you to comment on this. 0719-012-600. Is BBI the cure? Is BBI the cure? We'll be taking your calls after this. 0719-012-600. Also, you can post your comments on Spice FM KE on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmster, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmster, working to secure your growth.
Okay, so the overcast situation moving over Nairobi. Mostly cloudy conditions. 19 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 15 today. Nyeri is cloudy. It's going to be like that throughout until evening. Highs of 22 and lows of 15 with a chance of rain later on. Thunderstorms are forecasted for Nakuru with highs of 21 and lows of 14. Eldoret also will experience some rains going to highs of 19 and lows of 13. Rains expected in Kisumu as well later. Currently mostly sunny conditions. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. It's partly cloudy in Kakamega at 20, highs of 24 and lows of 15. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 28, highs of 30 and lows of 24. Partly cloudy conditions in Malindi at 28, highs of 30 and lows of 25. Experience some rain in Kampala today, highs of 25 and lows of 19. And also looks like rain in Dar es Salaam, 30 degrees to high and lows of 22. Johannesburg is mostly sunny and ever rising temperatures at 24 currently, going to highs of 31 and lows of 19. It's partly cloudy at 31 in Lagos and lows of 24. Going to the end of the day in Beijing, the sun is still out, highs of 22 and lows of 6. And in London, it's mostly cloudy at 11. We'll see highs of 15 and lows of 11 with cloudy conditions later. It's still foggy in Paris at 6, highs of 16 and lows of 5. And finally in New York, clear skies onto Monday morning, highs of 19 and lows of 14.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
18 minutes after 9, the conversation continues right here on Spice FM. This is the Situation Room. 0719-012-600 is BBI the cure. At what point did the BBI conversation become a constitutional amendment conversation?
Because it's actually what it is. The BBI cannot be it's what it is. The BBI cannot be the BBI. And what they propose to achieve is not possible to achieve unless you have a constitutional amendment.
Some parts of what they hope to achieve. I mean, because some of the things that they talked about in the BBI, for example, in terms of reintroducing statehood, nationhood, and kind of things, you don't have to. There's some things which we've even had a conversation in this room where they said that those things can start even now without amending the constitution.
Actually, that's what
part of the BBI can actually
be implemented
without changing the constitution.
35% revenues to the counties, right? You don't need to have a constitutional amendment to give 35% to the counties. Just go ahead and do it.
Let me explain why I'm saying what I'm saying. In order to change the kind of political system we have, okay, you need an amendment. Now, everything that you're saying is premised on there being, if we're to go by what His Excellency, the Governor of Kisumu told us, is they're having a stable atmosphere within the country. And the understanding is that if the top positions within government seems to have been shared out, meaning it isn't just winner take all, then you have that atmosphere. So all the other things that you're talking about, true, you do not need an amendment. But I am saying for it to actually work without the rancor that we actually put up with every so often, and to have this so-called peace, then you need to change the amendment. That's what I'm saying. The changing of the amendment, the changing of the amendment, the amendment of the
amending the changes,
constitutionalizing the change of the amendment.
Right.
It then takes a very pivotal position in the discussion.
Are we in agreement that our problem is the political system that we have?
Our problem.
Because I think we needed to have started with that. In the BBI process, the first thing was first identify what the problem is. Is there a consensus on what has been identified as a problem? Is there a consensus that our problem is, we know what our problem is, but now what is it that is causing this headache? Is there a consensus that it is a political system that we have where winner takes all, where we have a problem? Is the cure, because there are very many other needs that can come in. You know, the person who also vies as a presidential candidate, first of all, in the current constitution has been barred from taking up any other political office, any other office in the national leadership hierarchy. Is one of them saying, okay, so if you vie as a president and you lose, your party can nominate you into parliament. And that is open there. You know, that is one thing. There's the other one. We need to overhaul this whole system so that we don't have this presidential system, we have a parliamentary system. There's the other one. We need to have this hybrid system of a presidential parliamentary system that works this way and the other. All those are, these things that are now being prescribed as solutions. But what is causing our headache? Have we agreed on what is the cause of this headache?
See, we are the cause of our own headache. I mean, it's not as though we can blame the system. Systems don't run on their own, for heaven's sake.
But is there one problem? Is there just one problem? Because usually when you go and get a diagnosis, you're given the cure for this one thing that you're suffering from. Is it possible that there is one cure for what many people are saying there are different problems? People talk about a political system. People talk about tribal politics. People talk about divisive things that they see as a problem in this country. Can you have this one-size-fits-all cure for all of these things at the same time? Is it the way to go? Because what you
we
would
need to
see
have
as
a
problem-
conversation first before we get to that point.
Absolutely, that's the thing. I'm saying it has to be decided upon. What is the actual problem? The problem for one group of people could be one thing, and I don't think that you would have consensus again on what the problem is.
No. We
I
don't.
don't think
we don't have
everybody
a
is
national consensus, but
I don't think
believe
everybody
me,
is saying. I don't think everybody is saying, as we look at the country today, and we look at the problems that would have dogged, if it's elections, for example, the problems that you had in 2002, the problems that you had in 2007, the problems that you had in 2013. I don't think everybody would say this is the problem, this one thing.
No.
Unfortunately,
that I don't think will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you see, what I perceive or what I would say is a problem is what, in my opinion, causes me the discomfort.
Exactly.
And it may not be what causes you discomfort.
Exactly.
You see, like every time people talk about tribal problems in this country, you see, they think about ethnic enclaves that are determined by certain geographical configurations. But there is a bigger understanding of tribe that actually is at the heart of this problem. If you consider the homogeneity of, say, parliamentarians, it actually constitutes a tribe. If you think of what we like calling the elite, whether they are the academic elite, that's a tribe. If you think about the social classes that are brought about by a certain accumulation of wealth, that's a tribe because they resonate, they think the same, they have similar aspirations. Now, this tribal competition, in my mind, forget the ethnicity that goes with the tribe or the definition that goes, forget that. It's this other definition that, in my opinion, causes the problems. Because there's an aspiration for people to join those tribes. We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about corruption. Again, it's the competition to accumulate so that you can be accepted as a member. Because membership seems to be, in the minds of many people, it's determined by the accumulation of material things. Now, others will say, no, that isn't the problem. The problem actually is that people have become less religious or less fearing of God. Truth is this, the problems that we have in this country, and I think you guys have actually hit the nail on the head today, it's a debate that we must have.
For sure.
And determine what is it that is really the problem here.
So then if there's...
What's causing? Because, okay, let's even assume that we have identified the symptom. Here is the symptom. Polarization around political contest. So what is this that's causing this polarization?
But it's expected in political context.
But the level that we have now, that this polarization gets to a level where it's threatening to break apart the country. Threatening to leave people dead, threatening to actually even occupying the entire political space throughout the 5 years of one government cycle. That is serious polarization. Just around the elections, that's fine. I mean, that's what would happen. I mean, you're pushing for different candidates and different agenda and different manifesto. You'd expect so. But now when it becomes...
a way of life almost.
Yes. When it threatens livelihoods, when it threatens the stability of the nation and the country, then now there's a problem.
You know, there's a perspective that others have held that in the reality of our politics is that we actually campaign from one election to the other.
Yes.
There's hardly ever any break.
There's no break.
Yes.
Because after every election, somebody feels that I was robbed.
So I start
off. So I start off just first of all reminding everybody that this is a thief. He is not legitimately in office, and therefore I have launched my campaign to dislodge him from this this position that he has occupied because he doesn't belong there. So we have this continuous. So what is it that then would cause this? And what is our solution? That, I believe, was the main BBI. Identify what causes this all the time, and then tell us how we address it all the time. It appears to have come with several quick, fast solutions. Oh, you know what your problem is? Your problem is your leg is rotten. Let's amputate this leg.
You see, when you're talking about political contests, we didn't anticipate that the contest would begin within the ruling party. We assumed that those whom we knew and had been designated as official opposition are the ones who would be causing the hoo-ha. But then, the song changed somewhere mid-sentence, and suddenly you figured, hey, wait a moment, something has moved here and it isn't quite what it was. The person who was and the grouping that were officially in the opposition seemed to have an understanding with those one part of those who are in government, and there's another part of those who are supposed in government who seems to be fast and furiously taking over the role of the opposition. Now, that was not anticipated. And then a new narrative came into being. But the narrative is just part of a political process that this competition that we refer to as politics brings about. You want to put forward your case and present yourself as the person who is best suited to represent the population of that country. And so you have to present yourself as being that person. So these narratives we keep hearing about, hustler versus dynasty, it's a narrative that is being presented. This is the narrative that the suitor has presented.
It's an SPV.
Yes, yes, it is. It's what it is. So, but does it actually answer the question of what really is our problem?
No,
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
None of this is answering that question. When the conversation then happens and, it's about let's change the constitution, let's all, we may be running faster than we're walking, than we're talking. So you're here, you're talking about this, but then you're already past the corner. You're already going down. I mean, take this patient to the ICU. No, take them to theater immediately. What you need to do is you need to remove their heart.
Making decisions on the go, on the fly, without actually sitting down and having a consultation in the doctor's office and saying, this and this and this is the problem.
From the results,
and then
this is
from
what we are
these
seeing.
results, we need to do this. And I don't think that diagnostic consultative process has actually taken place until the end, unfortunately. Because again, if you have a mix and a mash of what different people are saying their issue is, it has not been taken into consideration then to fuel the information that then gives the solution, unfortunately. So it would appear that we are applying treatment on something that you really don't know what the sickness is.
Is BBI,
even if you know, you're not using it as a basis for treatment.
Is BBI the answer to Kenya's problems? 0719-012-600. We'll take your calls after this. Let's first of all take a look at the traffic, what's happening on the roads at 9:30.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, so it's looking better. On Thika Road this morning as you're trying to get into the CBD. Not as chock-a-blocked as it was before. Officially out of traffic hour now. Mombasa Road, we're still going to see the heightened levels of traffic here and there as times dip and rise. Around the construction that's taking place on the expressway, expect traffic there, guys. We were told until the end of the year, expect heightened levels of traffic, and as they continue with this construction, it's going to get worse. Monday, today, is adding to one of those days when everybody's back into the city. So Mombasa Road, we're likely to see traffic outbound, quite some, throughout the morning and well into the afternoon. And then, of course, it'll pick up again in the evening. Okay, so plan ahead of time. That's what we can say. The construction on Jogoo Road is almost over, guys. So that means Lunga Lunga and Likoni would be open soon. The closure of those affects some traffic and then out towards Jogoo Road. Other than that, it seems to have settled down. If something does pop up through the day, let us know. 40127, that's the text line. Or tweet, SpiceFMKE.
Spice Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
27 minutes to 10. 0719-012-600 is BBI, the answer to Kenya's problems. And we are looking at the answers coming in. There's just above that, Daniel Osiemondiere, who says BBI is a cure given that President Uhuru wants to deliver it without vested interests. If it were not for Ruto-Raila rivalry, we could not be here in the first place. Ruto always opposes anything that Raila supports without thinking. He goes on to say, our problem is in religion. 99% of Kenyans are Christians, yet we lead in corruption, land grabbing, and all other social ills. Across the borders in Somalia, 100% Muslims deliver justice for COVID-19 theft cases in a flash.
It isn't 19. It's actually the figures are 87%, not 97.
87% are
Christians in this country.
Purportedly Christian.
Oh,
okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Kuria in Nyeri. Good morning, Kuria.
Hi, how are you, Eric?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very fine. Now I want to contribute to today's discussion.
All right.
I think what we are doing, Eric, we are taking it so much out of context on this BBI issue. One, let's take a case scenario.
Okay.
I want to blame three partners in this. I want to blame the media.
Mm-hmm.
I want to blame Jubilee, and I want to blame ODM.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on media part,
mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. You guys call the Mutua, the Governor Mutua, or this other guy from Makueni. You also call my Madam Deputy Governor Karogo from Nyeri.
Yep.
When was the last time you media called them and told them, you guys, look, bring your manifesto. Mutua, you've been in power for 7 years, since 2013. Bring your manifesto. What have you done to the people of Machakos?
Mm-hmm. Now
go to Jubilee. Even Jubilee themselves, they have been there for 7 years, not so.
Yep.
Ask this guy, ask Uhuru, the president, what have you done for 7 years? Go to Ruto. Why are you issuing wheelbarrows around? What policies have you put in place for the youth? So you as media, you need to play a part on that. Even go to Raila himself, tell him, okay, you guys had Sifuna the other day, and there was a girl from media who was so harsh on him. You remember, yeah?
Mm.
Now, go to Sifuna, ask him, Sifuna, Kidero was the county governor for Nairobi. What has he done for the people? If kama mwananchi ametosheka, why do you have to go to BBI thing issue? Just that. That is my fight I have with the media and of course the Jubilee government. And
so
of
it's
course
about fulfillment of the manifesto and their agenda.
Yes, when you bring Karogo there, my girl, deputy governor from Nyeri, tell her, my friend, can you bring Nakuru's manifesto on the table? You scrutinize to the latter.
Okay, actually, maybe what you're saying is we don't go through it, step by step. But every time we have conversations, we raise the issues of what is it that you've done as a government to address the ills of your people. Whichever governor we bring, we ask them. For example, we'll ask Mutua, we ask the ANC leader, we ask the governors that we've spoken to, governor of Laikipia, governor of Makueni, all of them, we ask, so what programs are you running? What is it that you promised and how have you delivered?
And you press hard on them. Now look at Nisha, there was today's newspaper, that madam was highlighting today's newspaper about the banks, they are still charging,
Mm-hmm.
Now, why get central bank governor ask him, look, you guys, what were you meaning when you told us that there's a holiday for paying interest? Now, tuko na deni tunafaa kulipa. Kumbe they were lying to us, or maybe you see such issues. Now, those issues, we don't need to go to this BBI thing. Hii kitu BBI itasaidia aje mkulima ambaye ako Nyeri, itasaidia aje yule tuseme Aluo man who is fishing there in Lake Victoria. That is the issue we want right now. That was just my contribution, my friend. And
Thank you,
Korea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day in Nyeri.
You too, please.
Lydia in Parklands, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. I feel we should not waste our time with BBI.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to be genuine they should publish the BBI constitution so that people can learn and understand what it is about. They should not keep it secret. But through Spice FM, I've learned that they don't like the presidential government. They prefer a parliament government. This is ridiculous. A parliament government, you know, when Ababu Nyamamba said that the MPs are going to a secret room and collecting bribes not to pass the good laws. And you know, when he stood for elections, men in black came and scuttled the ballot papers. So there's nothing BBI can teach us how to behave. Even when Maraga, Chief Justice Maraga told Raila, if you're arguing about the elections, stand again. Just you and Uhuru, the president. Just two of you. He refused. IEBC gave him a form. He wrote a letter to IEBC, I'm not going to stand. So he just doesn't know how to behave in clean law. And when he refused to sign the paper of IEBC that he wants to refuse, he went to Uhuru Park and tried to crown himself as president. And there were rioting going on, shops were being broken into, and as soon as he shook Uhuru's hand, the riots stopped.
So,
that is what the handshake was and nothing else.
So BBI is a waste of time, according to you?
It's a waste of time. They just don't know law. Like now how they send men in black to scuttle the ballot papers. Can such a person teach you BBI? No.
Thank you,
They
Lydia.
are just rioters.
Thank
you.
you. Ed Getonga in Nyeri, good morning.
Hey, morning, guys.
How are you?
Morning.
Okay, now I have a question.
Hmm?
The current constitution that we are using, how is it helping us right now? Because actually, the same adage that was, oh, we are bringing this constitution to help you people, is the same adage that BBI is coming with. And the thing is, it only benefits the politicians. Because actually, the funny thing is, even before we promulgated this constitution, before we had a referendum, people had copies of the constitution. And they had the option to read. There were civic educators. But what did people do? They just voted it in because so-and-so is supporting it, so-and-so is supporting it. So right now, people are asking themselves, why the hell did we do it? Because we have a big recurrent budget, but not a developmental budget. But if you ask that person, where did you vote? Where did you align? They're going to tell you, I aligned myself on this line because so-and-so was supporting it. So BBI is not even going to be a solution, actually. It's just going to be another problem.
So are you saying, Ed, that this particular constitution that we now have is actually not useful?
I can tell you this, City, huh?
Yes.
It isn't. Okay, maybe you can say some parts of it are, but when it comes to the devolution part of the government, it's not, because actually, if you remember very well, City, that was the line that people were being told, tunataka kuwaletea
maendeleo
uongozi
mashinani.
Yes, but people didn't know that hii uongozi is coming with a cost, right?
Okay.
The same thing, and I can tell you this for a fact.
So what would you rather we do now? So if you feel right now that the current constitution is not serving us, what would you like us to do?
Okay, I can say this,
Yep.
If we could repeal the devolution part, that's it.
Okay.
That's the one thing in the constitution that makes the whole constitution bogus.
Thank you, Ed.
Because sorry, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Because look at this. If we have a big recurrent budget, there's not going to be development. And if maybe let's say, look at this. Corruption has been on a high end, right? Why? Because the systems in government right now are so, we kind of rushed in to deliver a baby that was premature. And so we've delivered so many babies prematurely that we don't know. We have a corruption saga in let's say, for example, Kirinyaga. We have another one in Migori. We have another one. Honestly speaking, why is this all happening? Because there is so much money to be used by the so-called devolution governments. There is so much money to be used, and there is so much money to be looted, because even previously when we were
That's
in
your
a national
point.
government system, you know how the money was going to go.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ed.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
0719-012-600. Michael Wanga says on Twitter, yes, we need BBI to add more money and resources to the counties and strengthen the institutions that fight corruption. The BBI is to fix the divisive politics of us versus them. The country is hanging. BBI is a reset button. Let's go back to the phone line. Solomon in Mombasa. Solomon, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Very well.
Fine,
thanks.
thank you, Solomon.
How have you been, Solomon?
Tunajifungia tu ku Mombasa. So my opinion would be, since independence, we had a constitution that at some point it favored the country very well.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, we were at the level with Singapore and Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
But with time, we realized certain regions have not yet developed. So we wanted to bring the devolution part of it. So that would mean the old constitution was not bad, but it don't have the aspect of the devolution part. My old opinion, if the old constitution would just implement the devolution part, I believe will be much, much better off. Because see, the old constitution had the opposition, the rid of majority. It had whatever to cater for number 2 and whatever. But right now, when the winner takes all, the loser becomes nothing.
So it sounds like you support the BBI process.
No, see, I cannot support it. I have not read it.
Oh.
Process, not report.
Yeah?
Process.
You see,
The
the
BBI,
process,
the BBI idea.
The BBI idea, yes, I support it on a condition. Until I read it, that's when I can make up my mind.
Okay.
If it's something that is not going to add any value, I don't think I'll despise it. There's a madam from Parkland that say that it is not helping. But there are some things that an investment that you make, you not get the return right now, but in the near future, but it will be at a cost.
Okay.
So that in the long run, we avoid all these clashes. These fights, trust me, it creates animosity and we hate each other.
Thank you, Solomon.
And people lose their lives.
Asante sana. 0719-012-600. Martin in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes.
Is the BBI the answer to Kenya's problems?
We've not read it, but I suspect that it will not, of course, solve the problems that we have. So, because I suspect that it is all about creation of new positions in the government to benefit the political elite. Now, for example, BBI will not eradicate corruption that is definitely killing the country. Then BBI will not actually give us the president or any other leader that will actually know that it is not good to appoint his tribal men to all the government departments, almost all the government departments. Yeah, so BBI is not the solution to the problems that we are facing in this country.
Right. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for your contribution. Let's take a break now at 13 minutes to 10 o'clock. We're still taking your calls, 0719-012-600. Also, you can SMS 40127 and tweet Spice FM KE or post your comment on Facebook. Spice FM KE, is BBI the answer to Kenya's problems? Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings done. Yeah, the answer to Kenya's problems. Dave Ogola says any legislator or leader that says Kenya's problems can only be solved by BBI should not be in office in the first place. It means that they cannot deliver. They are not delivering services to their people because there's no BBI. What were you elected for? It's an excuse, he says. Let's go to the phone lines. Elijah in Nairobi, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
So I think one of the things, at least for me, is not even the process or the report. I don't trust the people who are driving it. So they've proven times without number to be self-seeking. If we had a process that was being driven by people who've stood on basis of integrity, at least to the public-facing aspect, there are people who have parted ways on principle and not on profit. These are people who, if they presented such a process, would be more palatable. We have whistleblowers who've been run out of the country. We have guys who are in charge of human rights. We have legal and brilliant minds who advise other countries. But because they don't have the political clout, their ideas seldom see light of day. So whether this thing comes with bells and roses, whether it comes with the poison chalice that we all expect it to be, as long as these guys are the ones driving it, personally, I will meet it with a lot of skepticism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elijah. Mohammed Dinmoki Jembe.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Good morning, sir. Assalamu alaikum wangwana.
Hatujambo kaka.
Mimi nashukuru, nimefurahi kuwasikia tena hewani.
Tunashukuru pia tumefurahi kusikia.
From day one, when we gained independence, corruption was a crime. To marginalize is also a crime. And then we came up with the new Constitution 2010. Now we are coming up with a BBI. My friends, even if we write our Constitution with golden ink made of gold, and then we dotted it with diamonds, as long as implementation is not there, impunity is always rampant. And then morally, we misbehave morally. Our behavior. Tunateka maji na pakacha ndugu. Otherwise, tutaendelea tu kuzungumza mpaka kozi kauke. Hiyo ndio mawazo yangu. Hata tukaandika na wino wa dhahabu na tukatia vitone vya almasi. Ni kuteka maji na pakacha tu ndugu zangu. Hakuna implementation. Morally, we are not upright. Everybody is there for his own personal interest. They are leading us instead of pulling us. They are pushing us. Right. You can't pull a chain. You can't pull a rope. A rope, you have to pull it. You can't push it. That's leadership.
Yeah.
Kwa hivyo, haya ndio mchango wangu bwana.
Asante sana.
Asante sana kaka.
Levi says BBI is all about what Babu Owino said in Saboti. I don't remember what he said in Saboti, but he says creating spaces to selfish ends. Full stop. You see, this whole conversation has been hijacked by that political angle of it, and then looking at what is it that the leaders who are driving this conversation aspire or are hoping to achieve. Perceptions. That the people who are leading this particular process have a specific agenda, and this agenda is not about the country, it's about themselves and their political fortunes and their futures. Then that whole thing muddies the water.
You see, the two things that have been pointed out by Elijah and Mohammed, the individuals who are leading it. And this is, remember, early on in the show, we talked about the unfortunate reputation that our politicians tend to have in the eyes of the general public.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they're the ones leading it, unfortunately, whatever it is, no matter how good it is, it's tainted even before you have been told what it is.
Yep.
Simply because of the reputation that our politicians have.
True. Nzuri in Masai Mara. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you, sir?
Salama kabisa. How is the Masai Mara?
Not bad.
Which side of Masai Mara are you?
I just not of town.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to make two contributions on BBI.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, BBI cannot be the solution to our problems. It can only mitigate our problems. But if it can mitigate, fine, we can pass it.
Okay.
But the most important thing in Kenya here is the political will. We can have the best constitution, but if the political will is not right, then I think we are not going to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
America changes its constitution each and every time. It's always about the political will. So let's sort that problem, and once, even if you have a bad constitution, but the political will is correct, then I think we'll be right. Thank you very much.
Asante sana Nzuri. So it's about the political will. It's all coming back to the politicians and what the politicians do and how the politicians speak, how the politicians behave, and deep inside, what is the driving and motivating the politicians.
It's selfish interest, unfortunately. That is the perception of quite a number of people, that it is selfish. That when you're going into this office, that you're not really thinking about the country as a whole. You're thinking about what you can actually get for yourself, any kind of political expediency you can attain. And then really you find that after the 10 years or 5 years that you were there, if you've moved a step in a forward direction, then it's okay for you. That's what it is.
You know, the general public, or the Mwananchi, as we refer to members of our own country, keep moving and they keep changing and they keep evolving and they keep understanding more and more. It looks like it's a politician who hasn't evolved because they keep saying the same things over and over. So you get the impression that they're probably not aware that they're talking to the same people they've been telling this thing for the longest time, and there has been no action that has followed some of these things. So people tend to listen to you, but with a certain tilted head. It's like, okay, this is you again at it. All right, sawa, endelea.
Okay. Sema tu vile unasema.
Yes.
Daniel Mugurumwangi says, personally, currently I can't say BBI is a cure or not until it's distributed to the public. We go through it and then we'll be able to come to a conclusion whether it's beneficial or not. Still saying, all right, so whatever it is, bring it first. Let me make an informed decision. It went through validation before it was distributed to the people. It's being championed now as, the solution, and prepare for a referendum before people have internalized it or even just discussed. At this point, at least what we should be having is understanding what the basic structures of the BBI.
We should be debating the outcomes of it, yes, and saying this is what it is.
Yes. We are still not at that point, and hopefully we shall get to that point someday soon.
Better be. I mean, this snowball seems to be going down the hill, right? It seems it's already gaining traction. It would seem as though it's a done deal, unfortunately. And for a number of people, they will be like, okay, so now, even if I were to debate it now, even if we were to enter into any kind of debate at this point, it's something that has already been decided. What if I decide that, okay, me and my group of people of 1,000 strong decide that we don't like this, and you've already decided, then what?
But
then putting people in another, you and your 1,000 people will sit down and just watch and see.
But that is actually, look, in political competitions around the world, if it exists, what you're discussing is what is to be expected anyway. It doesn't matter how finely tuned it was. It doesn't matter whether the consensus was even broader. Believe me, when it comes to debating the content,
there will be very, very many schools of thought. Huh?
Yes, there will be.
To arrive onto what end?
Now, you see, this is now where the question was raised about the usefulness of the Constitution. Now, this is one of the useful things about the Constitution. Many people don't seem to understand that there's a time you couldn't have this discussion. It simply wasn't possible. Or you had it, and you would be wondering who is waiting for you. to pick you up and take you to a place where they were going to ask you to assist them with all manner of things.
And at least there's a constitutional conversation, so you get to even understand the constitution that you have in the first place. CT, today's proverb.
If you think you are too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. If you consider what proverbs are supposed to actually represent, sometimes teaching, sometimes a norm that has been forgotten, sometimes injecting a little drama so that the point can be made, perhaps in a multicolored way. Mosquitoes are often considered an irritant. One, the noise that they make, they draw your attention to their existence in a room, and they are capable of keeping you awake. And you sometimes forget that it's actually a very, very small insect. But then there's the other part of it. If it actually bites you, there's a likelihood that it could actually infect you, and you could actually have malaria. But it has nothing to do with its size. It is what it can do. So in the same way, it isn't a question of whether your view is important or not. No. The process of debating, like what we're saying here, and participating, that in itself is useful. But even if you don't think it is useful, what comes out of it would never have been there if the discussion wasn't there.
Was not there.
Yes,
Indeed.
that in itself is also useful.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's now 10 o'clock. Have a great day, folks.